Chapter 823. Taoism was the sect of all Taoists. Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism. Although Taoism had declined in recent years and was the weakest of the three, it had a heritage of 1,000 years. However, it had been passed down for thousands of years, so it naturally had a deep foundation. Be it wealth or combat strength, it was not something others could compete with. Even if it was a family of generals that was as wealthy as a nation, if they really offended the Taoists, they might not be able to gain any advantage. Just as his master, Divine Jizi, said if there were 10 million Taoist disciples backing Fang Yen, the general family would not be able to do anything to him. At the very least, his life would be guaranteed. However, Fang Yen still couldn't agree to it. Or rather, he couldn't casually agree to it. Fang Yen looked warily at Divine Jizi and asked with a smile, "Master, tell me directly. What do you want me to do? Don't think that monks weren't human, and don't think that monks didn't have smart people." His master, Divine Jizi, had rushed all the way to Swallow Dock. If it was just to treat his grandfather's leg, Fang Yen would never believe it. He had repeatedly enticed him to head to the Taoists and even said that he was willing to have 10 million Taoist disciples backing him. Then what did he want? Or rather, what did the Taoists want? Without figuring this out, Fang Yen didn't have the courage to close his eyes and follow his master to the Taoists. Although he was very willing to believe in his master. "Do you still remember what I told you about the Taiji painting?" Divine Jizi asked in a deep voice. "Yes." Fang Yan's mind stirred as he asked, "What happened?" Not long ago, one of the 3 dragons of Wuxia, a black dragon, headed to the immeasurable temple to steal the Taiji painting. Divine Jizi's eyes were filled with anger as he said, "The immeasurable temple is where the dignity of the Taoists lies. How can we tolerate such impudence? To forcefully plunder it, isn't this bullying us Taoists?" And then? Fang Yen asked anxiously. The most mysterious of the 3 dragons of Wuxia, Black Dragon, had appeared. Furthermore, he had appeared for the Taiji painting. Black Dragon had been famous for a long time and was already a heavenly Tao realm expert. Why did he need the Taiji painting? What secrets were hidden in the Tai Chi diagram? The Black Dragon injured Qing Xian, the book reader of the Fanghua Pavilion. The Taichung sect master discovered the enemy and fought with him. The Black Dragon saw that it was difficult for him to win, so he escaped under the cover of night. The Tai Chi painting wasn't stolen, was it? Of course. The Taiji diagram is the Tao sect's supreme treasure. How can it be casually taken away by someone? After pondering for a while, Fang Yen looked at Jizi and said, "At that time, the 2 masters were looking for the guardian of the Tai Chi diagram. I wonder if you have found the fated person." Jizi looked at Fang Yen and said, "Whether we are fated or not, we have to see the Tai Chi painting first. Fang Yen, are you willing to give it a try?" "Why me?" Fang Yen asked. "Because we are fated," Jizi said. "I have always been looking for a fated person. However, you and I are fated. Isn't it also fated with the Tai Chi painting? When Tyrant and I first saw you, we had already included you in our list of candidates. However, at that time, you were too vicious and frivolous. It was difficult for you to bear the heavy responsibility." "Master, in fact, I am quite frivolous now," Fang Yen said hurriedly. Jizi looked at Fang Yen with a burning gaze and asked, "Until today, you are still unwilling to bear this responsibility?" "Master, I am too tired." Fang Yen looked at his master Jizi sincerely and said, "I want to protect this family, and I am already exhausted. How would they be able to protect this country and its people? I am afraid of suffering and tiredness. I just want to rest, let me take a breather." There was a faint smile on Fang Yan's face, as if a gust of wind could blow it away without a trace. "I am a lazy person. If possible, I just want to find a school and be a leisurely teacher who stands aloof from worldly affairs. But I have been forced to this step. Every step is filled with danger, and every step is filled with danger. Master, I am afraid. I am afraid that if I die, our Fang family will be finished. My grandpa is old and weak, my mother is sick because of long-term worry, and I haven't even married a wife. If I die, our Fang family will be ruined. I am not a bad person and I am not a coward. When the country needs me, I am willing to stand up and fight for it. Like the countless heroes and sages of our Swallow Dock, I am willing to fight for the prosperity of the country and the destiny of the people. But I don't want to take the initiative to meet them. I don't want to carry those responsibilities on my shoulders all the time. I don't want to suppress myself to the point that I can't breathe. I don't want to think that I'm the guardian of the Taiji painting every time I wake up from my sleep. Is there anything that I didn't do well or do well? Master, my biggest dream is to take good care of my grandpa's health, to make my mother happy, to marry a wife and have several children, and then to live happily with my family. Oh, by the way, master, I'm going to get married. She's a very good girl. Tianjizi pondered for a long time, then looked at Fang Yan and asked, if I give you the Tai Chi diagram, do you want it? Yes, Fang Yan answered without hesitation. Whoever didn't want it was an idiot, but just because I took the Tai Chi diagram, you can't treat me as the guardian of the nation. Someone in the east invaded the border looking for Fang Yan. Someone killed someone in the west looking for Fang Yan. A cow disappeared in the south looking for Fang Yan. Whose daughter-in-law in the north didn't get pregnant, looking for Fang Yan. Fang Yan hoped that he was an independent individual with his own thoughts, not a puppet held hostage by national righteousness. Come with me, Tianjizi said. Master? Fang Yan was shocked. You really gave me the Tai Chi diagram? As you said just now, you are not a bad person, let alone a coward. You already have the basic conditions to obtain the Tai Chi diagram. Taoists pay attention to naturalness, and they will never force others with their own will. Don't worry, even if you get the Tai Chi diagram, you are still Fang Yan. Just like how Mo Qingdi was still Mo Qingdi even after he got the Tai Chi diagram. Master, I'm going to pack up now, let's go immediately, Fang Yan said excitedly. Your grandfather asked me to stay for lunch. Tianjizi said helplessly. Is this kid driving me away? Oh, is that so? Fang Yan was stunned for a moment, then said, then I'll go pack up first. We'll leave whenever you say so. It had just rained on Monkey Mountain, so the entire forest had been washed. The leaves were clear and beautiful, and the rocks were bright. The Taoist temple that was built at the edge of the cliff gave people an even more mysterious feeling, as if it was a divine temple. Fang Yan had been in Wuliang Temple for 3 days. Except for his master, Tianjizi, who brought him in, everyone else in the Taoist temple treated him like an invisible person. This was a little different from what he had expected. A talented young man like him was the hope of Taoism's resurgence. His master personally went to Swallow Dock to invite him. When he arrived at Wuliang Temple, the Taoist Taichung school led the legendary 3 mysteries and 7 mysteries to welcome him. Taichung stroked his beard and looked at him. He laughed and pointed at him and said, this kid has a good foundation and is extremely talented. In the future, the important task of guarding Taoism will be handed over to you. Then he took his hand and walked into the main hall. Under the gaze of the Taoist gods and countless Taoist elites, he took out the Tai Chi diagram and handed it to him. If he refused, Taichung would give it to him. If he refused again, Taichung would be furious and say that this was what the people of Taoism all over the world wanted. Fang Yan did not see the legendary Taichung schoolmaster. He did not even see the other 2 of the 3 mysteries and 7 mysteries. Don't they realize how important I am? Fang Yan suspected that he had been deceived by his master. They had brought him to Wuliang Temple on purpose to put him under house arrest. But why did they want to imprison him? Could it be that they were also bribed by the Jiang family? Fang Yan thought to himself. Then he immediately pushed this thought out of his mind. If the Jiang family can even bribe the Taoist sect, then I don't have to resist. I can just extend my head and let them chop it off. The only thing that satisfied Fang Yan was that the living conditions in Wuliang Temple were not bad. There was a balcony in his room. The balcony was suspended in the air, and if he stepped on it, he would see a cliff that was 10,000 feet high. The mountain breeze blew and the fog lingered. The distant mountains were like an ink painting, decorated with red and green, making people feel relaxed and happy. There was also Wuliang Temple's specialty ambergris to refresh his mouth. This kind of tea could not be drunk outside. Fang Yan could not bear to drink too much, so he hid a small pot of tea that the Taoist priest had given him and prepared to bring it back to his grandfather. His grandfather liked to drink this tea and it was good for his body. Knock, knock, knock. There was a light knock on the door. Fang Yan walked over and opened the door. His master, Tianjizi, was standing at the door with a smile. Master, you finally appeared? Fang Yan pulled his master's sleeve and said, where is the Tai Chi diagram? Didn't you say that you would give it to me? Tianjizi looked at Fang Yan with a smile and said, after the rain, the weather is late and autumn is coming. The mountains are beautiful, the scenery is good, and the air is good. Why are you always cooped up in the room? Come, I will take you out for a walk. Master. Fang Yan was not in the mood to look at the scenery. Chaoyan technology was being attacked by the Jiang family, and the willow tree in Lan Mountain Valley was still resisting the endless methods of the Jiang family. Although the Qin family had gone down the mountain to participate in the battle, their support was limited. The Jiang family was attacking with all their might, and the strength of the two was different. Most of the attacks had to be resolved by Fang Yan and the others themselves. Fang Yin only wanted to obtain the Tai Chi diagram as soon as possible, unravel the secrets within, discover the ultimate technique inside, and then quickly return to Flower City to kill everyone. When your mind is in a mess, all you see is negative karma. Tianjizi said unfathomably, "Put down your burden and run to nature. Master, if you don't give me the Tai Chi diagram, I will run to Swallow Dock." Chapter 824. You have no understanding. Tianjizi looked at Fang Yin with disappointment. He was very disappointed with his disciple. "I have said it so bluntly, but you don't understand anything. Master, with all due respect, you are not straightforward at all. What do you want to say? Are you going to give me the Tai Chi diagram or not? Didn't I tell you to go out to see the scenery and breathe the fresh air? I asked about the Tai Chi diagram, but you asked me to see the scenery. Master, don't play with me, okay? I'm stupid. It's not fun." Tianjizi felt that his breathing became heavy. He wanted to use his 12 palms of the Celestial Master to slap Fang Yin into meat paste. Inexplicably, how did he get such a disciple? If possible, Tianjizi really wanted to return it. "If you don't go out to see the scenery, how can you find the scenery you want to see?" Tianjizi forcibly suppressed the hostility in his heart with the lousy mind-clearing mantra and said while looking into Fang Yan's eyes. Worried that he still didn't understand, he blinked his eyes cutely. "Master, tell me the truth. Are you going to give me the Tai Chi diagram or not? Why did you blink?" Tianjizi took Fang Yin for a walk in the yard, muttering, "The beauty of heaven and earth is in the mountains, in the water, in the air, in the breeze, in the moon, in the river. In the spring sowing and autumn harvesting, in the frost, in the snow, in the flowers and plants in the yard, and in the big vat in the corner. It's not that there is no beauty in the world, but there is a lack of eyes to discover it." Fang Yin finally had a pair of eyes that could discover beauty. He strode toward the big vat in the corner of the yard. He stood next to the big vat, but there was no movement in the vat. "Master." Fang Yin turned around and called out. His eyes searched around, but he found that he had lost his master. Fang Yin was stunned for a while, and his face became dignified. He picked up a small pebble from the ground and threw it into the big vat. The pebbles splashed with tiny splashes of water, and ripples formed on the surface of the water tank. When the ripples disappeared, the mirror surface of the water tank became calm again. Fang Yin craned his neck to look into the vat. The water was pitch black and seemed bottomless. This was just an ordinary water tank. Many people would set up such a large tank in their yard to raise fish or grow some aquatic plants. However, Fang Yin had an illusion that when he stood in front of the water tank, his heart was pounding fiercely, as if there was a dangerous monster hiding inside, or something important was about to happen. Rain began to fall from the sky again, falling into the water tank. Tiny but beautiful ripples appeared on the surface of the water. The bottom of the water tank had green plants growing wildly, and the bottom of the water tank was covered with dense moss. A snail was carrying a backpack and trying to climb a mountain to a water tank. After climbing a few centimeters with great difficulty, it slipped and fell. It shook its head and tried again. However, all of this was meaningless to Fang Yin. He stretched out his hand and opened it in the air. The tiny raindrops made his palm wet. "It's raining." Fang Yin sighed softly. When he turned around and was about to leave, the expression on his face suddenly became strange. His heart pounded again, and an emotion called joy filled his whole body. He turned around abruptly and saw a shocking scene. On the mirror surface of the water tank, two big fish, one red and one black, were blowing bubbles with their huge heads. Puff, puff, puff. One bubble after another came out of their mouths and floated on the surface of the water tank. Soon they exploded again. "You guys are so cute," Fang Yin said to them with a smile. Fang Yin looked at them affectionately as if he was looking at Yi Ro. The two big fish, one red and one black, blinked their small eyes and looked at Fang Yin. Then they blew a long string of bubbles at him. Puff, puff, puff. Fang Yin laughed loudly. Crack. The begonia cup made by Kai Mingfu, a porcelain master from the Qing dynasty, was smashed into pieces on the wall. General Xing's face was gloomy, his eyes cold, and there was an irrepressible ruthlessness in his voice. The whole army was wiped out? General Xing's voice was like a roar. How could the whole army be wiped out? Second young master hid very well, but he was still stepped on by Fang Yan's two martial nephews, Fang Yinying and Fang Haohan. The Snake Lord controlled the snake formation to trap second young master. In a moment of desperation, second young master ignited the genetic bomb, so everyone died. Everyone is dead. General Xing panted heavily. He took a cigar from the box in front of him. After carefully trimming it, he lit it and took a deep puff. In the process of doing this, his state of mind finally calmed down. His eyes were like ghosts in the smoke. He looked at the man in black in front of him and said, "What about you? Why are you still alive?" "Because the heavens want me to live," the black-clothed man said in a heavy voice. "Fang Yen is not dead, so I have to live well." "You don't help?" "I've tried but I failed." The black-clothed man calmly faced General Xing's scrutiny and doubt. He said, "Perhaps I can't turn defeat into victory, but if I want to leave they can't keep me." Even though he was just a dog of the general family, the black-clothed man had an arrogance that would not allow others to look down on or insult him. General Xing also knew that he was very confident when he said these words. General Xing knew that his probing was too obvious. He took a cigar from the box and threw it over. The black-clothed man caught the cigar and then returned it. He said, "I don't smoke. You're living a boring life." General Xing laughed and teased. "I'm not suspecting you of anything. It's just that this matter is too strange, and this news really does make one's heart feel bad. No matter what, he is my younger brother. Tell me, how should I go back and talk to the old man about this? He always had high hopes for him, but now this hope has been cut off by someone. He must not be in a good mood, right?" The black-clothed man did not answer. He knew that General Xing had no intention of letting him answer this question. General Xing looked at the black-clothed man in front of him and said, "You should know that you and I are grasshoppers on the same boat. In this world, besides the general family, no one can protect you." "I understand," the black-clothed man said. "You are a smart person." General Xing nodded his head with incomparable appreciation. He said, "I'm very happy that you were able to send this news to me. Then, from today onwards we are friends, right?" The black-clothed man was silent for a while. He said, "I don't have the qualifications to be friends with you." "Ah." General Xing laughed loudly. He pointed at the black-clothed man and said, "How could that be? You're a bastard and so am I. We should be friends from birth, right?" A smile appeared on the black-clothed man's face. He was also amused by General Xing's self-deprecating words. General Xing stood up and said, "The white-haired person sending off the black-haired person. This is truly a tragedy. I really don't want the old man's body to be harmed because of this matter, but I still have to tell him. He has to take care of the important matters of the family." The black-clothed man bowed as General Xing left. His body also disappeared into the darkness. Dead. The old man, who was tending to the precious camellia in the courtyard, stopped moving. His body stiffened as if he had been magically frozen. First was surprise and disbelief, then undisguised sorrow. "Is the news confirmed?" "It's confirmed," General Xing said in a low voice. "Although my brother has left the general family, he has been secretly contacting me. It's not easy for him outside, and I have done my best to support him with money and various other resources. After receiving the news, I tried to contact him again, but I still haven't received a response. His assistant has also disappeared. It seems that he's also dead. If he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse." The old man used a great deal of effort to straighten his back. He took off the cotton gloves on his hands and rubbed his calloused hands together. He said, "No matter what, you have to bring him back to me." "I will," General Xing said with a serious expression. "I've already sent people out to search. No matter what, you have to bring my brother back." The old man sat down on a rattan chair under the eaves. Because he used too much force, the chair creaked. General Xing handed over a cup of hot tea, but the old man did not reach out to take it. "I was the one who chased him out, so I have to bring him back." The old man muttered to himself. "If he's really gone, find a way to bury him in the Jiang family's ancestral grave." General Xing nodded again and said as if he was making a promise, "Grandpa, don't worry. I'll arrange it." "I regret it," the old man said softly. "What?" General Xing was stunned, not understanding why his grandfather would say such a thing. He had roamed his entire life and experienced countless battles, but he had never said the word regret. "Some time ago, Sir brought Fang Yen to our home as a guest and had the intention of making peace, but I refused," Jiang Shifu old man said with a sorrowful expression. "If I wasn't so extreme and stubborn at that time, I would have called back the military order to apologize and compensate him as much as he should have. This matter wouldn't have developed to this stage, and the military order wouldn't have ended up like this." General Xing was silent. He thought to himself, with his understanding of Fang Yen, if it was just Jiang Junling apologizing to Fang Yen would probably not accept it, right? But, since we've already taken this step. Jiang Shifu old man's hand gripped the handle of the rattan chair so hard that the old twigs creaked. "Then let's do our best. The Jiang family in Fangyan will not rest until one of us is dead. Chapter 825. There was no bright moon and not a single star. The entire sky was pitch black, just like what they were feeling at this moment. No one would have thought that a fight with an insignificant young man would develop into such a situation. It wasn't as if the Jiang family hadn't stepped on anyone before. There were many youths who were praised as brimming with talent, who still couldn't stand out. Their lives were mediocre and they spent their lives in sullenness and poverty. Because of their downfall, it naturally affected their descendants. Their entire family would have to pay the price for their foolishness and ignorance of the times. At that time they should have felt regret, right? But why had things developed in a direction they had never imagined after encountering Fang Yan? General Xing had never thought that the Jiang family would lose, much less that someone from the Jiang family would die. It should be the enemy of the Jiang family that had died. Grandfather Jiang Shifu's voice was very calm, but his words were filled with bone-deep hatred. General Xing knew that his grandfather had finally made his final decision. He would support him and Fang Yan unreservedly, until one side died in battle. Of course, General Xing knew that the one who would die in battle would definitely be Fang Yan, because even now General Xing still didn't believe that Fang Yan would be able to stop the Jiang family's aircraft carrier, which was moving at full speed. Of course he would be happy to see such an outcome. I will do my best. General Xing looked at his grandfather and said, I also have the confidence to avenge my younger brother. It's just that the Qin family has always been on the edge of the battlefield, which has brought us great trouble. For now, we still can't understand the Qin family's intentions. If we use too much force, I'm afraid the Qin family will get even more involved, and we will have to first face the pressure the Qin family will bring us. At that time, the Qin family will become our main opponent. If we use too little force and the Qin family doesn't feel the danger, then they will continue to fish in troubled waters, and take a vicious bite when we are unprepared. That is also extremely dangerous. Tomorrow, I'll go to the Qin family to find an old friend for tea, Grandfather Jiang Shifu said. Jiang Shifu said, It's time for you and that girl to give the Qin family an explanation. I'm sorry, General Xing said with a guilty expression. I've caused trouble for grandfather. Jiang Shifu waved his hand and said, Military order? I once had high hopes for him, but he disappointed me later on. I don't want that to happen to you. General Xing's eyes flashed with the light of swords as he said, I will make Fang Yan pay the heaviest price for what he has done. Go. Jiang Shifu waved his hand and said, Do your job well and take care of your health. General Xing stood up, bowed deeply to his grandfather, then turned around and walked out the door. After sending off the general, the tigress walked to the old man and said, Master, who do you think killed the military order? The old man asked. I don't know, the tigress said without hesitation. The old man smiled bitterly and said, You are quite smart to not want to get involved in these troublesome matters. Go and check it out. See if this grandson of mine is still my grandson. Yes. The tigress replied and strode away. The old man sat in the courtyard and sighed heavily. He thought of Fang Huwei, the old man who also lost his son. When he found out that his son died at the entrance of the village, his mood should be the same as mine, as cold to the bone, right? Winter is coming. Jiang Shifu old man pulled the front of his clothes and sighed softly, Yanjing. Maple Leaf Club. Luo Mingan stood at the entrance of the club, personally greeting every guest. Tonight, Maple Leaf Club will host a charity dinner. The proceeds will be donated to a group of nuns to help them rebuild their temple. This event was personally arranged by the real boss of Maple Leaf Club, Qin Tian. One of the 3 Maple Leaves of Maple Leaf Club, Luo Mingan, was in charge of this event. Luo Mingan greeted the VIPs with a smile as he looked at the elevator. She knew that woman would arrive very soon. But what made Luo Mingan confused was, since when did the Yin family and the Qin family have a relationship? She never heard that the woman from the Yin family had any sort of relationship with the woman from the Yin family. However, such a thing had happened and she was the one who had to handle it personally. Just as she was thinking about this, the elevator door opened again. Phoenix, dressed in a cyan frock, came out holding an old nun, followed by several other nuns in cyan shirts and hats. Seeing in Xiao Xiao's dress, Luo Mingan was stunned for a moment. Because she didn't know how to greet the young lady of the Yin family. She couldn't just call her abbess or master, could she? Of course, she only hesitated for a second. Luo Mingan quickly walked towards Phoenix and said with a smile, Missin, you're finally here. The 120 invited guests are almost all here. Would you like to go on stage and say a few words? Phoenix came over with the help of the old nun. She looked at Luo Mingan gratefully and said, Mingan, you've worked hard. If it weren't for you, it might have taken a long time for my masters and I to return home. I won't go on stage to say anything. I'll recite the Diamond Sutra with my masters and sisters backstage for those generous and kind people. Thank you, Missin. I'll convey your great love to everyone. I think everyone will be enthusiastic and help the masters rebuild the temple and rebuild the Sutra Pavilion. When Luo Mingan said this, her eyes were also looking at Phoenix. She had seen Phoenix once before. At that time, the woman was still proud and willful, with a spirited face and memorable red hair. Now Phoenix's hair was long and wrapped in a cyan hat. Her cheeks were thin, her eyes were deep, her temperament was calm, and she spoke gently. She seemed to be in a good state of mind. However, if the woman of the Yin family wanted to rebuild a temple, would she still need to use this kind of fundraising method? It was said that she and the nuns she brought back had lived outside for a long time and had never stepped into the Yin family. Even if the Yin family went to look for her, she would avoid them. She was hostile to her own family. Phoenix bowed to Luo Mingan and said, "Thank you again, Mingan. Missin, please go backstage and rest." Luo Mingan made an inviting gesture. Seeing Phoenix's slim back as she left with the nuns, Luo Mingan sighed softly in his heart. Why bother? Qini Tian was very busy these days. In fact, she could have been less busy because she was used to handing over a lot of things to her assistants and secretaries. However, if she didn't let herself be busy, she would be in a bad mood. Therefore, she took back the things that had been handed over in the past. For some major cooperation projects, she would personally negotiate. For some dispensable meetings, she would also attend for a while. For some collaborators that she was annoyed with before, she was also willing to take a few minutes out of her busy schedule to meet them. Oh, she even went to the CEO's office to look at the afternoon tea menu. She changed the cheesecake into matcha cake, saying that the former was too fat and not suitable for weight loss. At the end of a full day, when Qini Tian was ready to get off work and leave, the phone on the table rang. The assistant next to her picked up the phone and reported to Qini Tian saying, "Miss, there is a Miss Yi at the front desk asking to see you." "What?" Qini Tian closed the magazine in her hand. After a moment of thought, she said, "If her surname is Yi, then she must have said that she wanted to see me, not that she wanted to see me. Is that right?" The assistant didn't think it was a surprise, because he didn't think there was anything in this world that could be hidden from this proud and beautiful woman. He nodded and said, "Yes, the secretary at the front desk did say so. Missy asked to see you. Invite her up," Qini Tian said. The assistant conveyed the order and hung up the phone. Qini Tian thought for a while, got up from the sofa and said, "I'd better go out to meet her. After all, she is a guest from afar." The personal secretary brought up a pair of high heels and a coat, and the assistants packed up and followed Qini Tian out of the door. Ding! When the elevator arrived, Yi Ro appeared in the exclusive elevator for Qini Tian. Yi Ro looked at Qini Tian, who was standing at the door to greet her, and her expression didn't change at all. It seemed that this kind of thing was also within her expectation. She looked at Qini Tian and explained, "I thought you should be here, so I came to meet you. I hope I didn't disturb you." Qini Tian nodded like a proud little swan and turned around and said, "Please come with me." After entering the office, she said to the secretaries and assistants around her, "You can all leave now. Don't come in without my order. Miss, do you want some tea? Or coffee?" The secretary asked with embarrassment. "No need," Qini Tian said. "Not now." Clang! The luxurious door of the office was slammed shut. Qini Tian looked at Yi Ro and said, "Are you here to make fun of me?" After a pause, she shook her head and said, "No. You are not that kind of shallow woman." She seriously looked at Yi Ro standing in front of her and said, "So, are you here to comfort me?" She shook her head again and said, "No, this is not something you can do." "Then Miss Yi, why did you come to see me?" Chapter 826. In ancient times there was a saying that a king couldn't meet another king. Now there was a saying that the first branch couldn't meet the mistress. When two or more women were together, the fierceness of the fight could be compared to a small-scale war. One was a powerhouse who stood at the peak of martial arts, and the other was a queen who was as rich as a country. Any man who was able to gain the favor of one of them would be a great blessing to his ancestors. However, Fang Yan just had deep feelings for these two women. You couldn't have your cake and eat it too. Qini Tian and Yi Ro were much more precious than fish and bear paws. Therefore, when Fang Yan wanted to marry Yi Ro, he would naturally hurt the other woman, Qini Tian. Qini Tian was such a proud and independent woman. Strictly speaking, she was the loser in this battle of love. Today Yi Ro took the initiative to meet her, which naturally aroused her uncontrollable jealousy in her heart. Whether it was a woman or a goddess, jealousy was inborn and hard to get rid of. Even an excellent woman like Qin Tian couldn't help but think, why did he choose Yi Rou instead of Qin Tian? Is she really more suitable than me? Qin Tian refused to accept it. Therefore, the moment she saw Yi Rou, she had restrained and reduced her hostility. Yi Rou knew where her hostility came from, so she didn't get angry and treated it indifferently. Yi Rou's attitude angered Qin Tian even more. She found that the more she showed that she cared about Yi Rou, the more it proved that she had lost completely. Of course, this was only a battle between a few sentences. Soon, both of them returned to their normal state of interaction. Qin Tian didn't want to continue to entangle with the enemy on the battlefield where she had been defeated, so she led the topic to Yi Rou herself. She was a little curious. Yi Rou was going to marry Fang Yan. Why did she come to visit me at this time? To show off? She rejected this idea without hesitation. If Yi Rou was a woman with no self-restraint, Fang Yan wouldn't have chosen her as his life partner. Qin Tian believed in his own judgment. How could the man she fancied be bad? Qin Tian's office was excessively spacious and luxurious. There was an office area, a lounge area, a sports area, and even a music area. Usually, in addition to Qin Tian working and resting here, there were several secretaries and assistants guarding around to receive all kinds of orders from Qin Tian at any time. To facilitate the negotiation with Yi Rou, Qin Tian drove all the staff out. Even though there were only 2 skinny women in this 400 to 500 square meters room, it did not feel empty and desolate. This was because the aura that these 2 women exuded was enough to fill up this huge room. Yi Rou walked to the French window and looked down at the city. She said softly, Fang Yan is having a hard time. Only you can help him. Straight to the point. Regardless of whether she liked this woman or not, Qin Tian had to admit that she liked this woman's straightforwardness and magnanimity. If there was something to say, just say it. Squeaking and nagging would only make people annoyed. Qin Tian walked to the sofa and sat down. She picked up the banana milkshake that she had just taken a sip of. She sucked the pure white soft tube with her delicate red lips and said with a smile, Did you come for this matter? The general family's offensive is fierce. Watching can't withstand it. If you were someone else, Fang Yan would ask you for help. But you are Qin Tian, so no matter how difficult it is, he won't ask you for help, Yi Rou said softly. So, I should take the initiative to help him. Qin Tian looked at Yi Rou thoughtfully and said with a smile, How do you know that I didn't help him? I know that you have been helping him. Yi Rou looked at Qin Tian calmly, making it clear that she was speaking from the bottom of her heart. I know that you have done many things behind his back. But this is far from enough. So, what you mean is, I should drag the entire Qin family into a battle with the general family? What if the general family will suffer a crushing defeat in this battle? Qin Tian's eyes were like twinkling stars, instantly lighting up the entire room. He asked, What guarantee do you have? The Heavenly Tao Realm's heart of Heavenly Tao, Yi Rou said with certainty. After entering the Heavenly Tao Realm, one has to follow the heavens and follow one's heart. If one goes against this heart, at best, one's cultivation will no longer improve. At worst, one's realm will collapse and one will become a cripple. Qin Tian sighed softly and said, You should know my current situation in the Qin family. It's not up to me to make decisions in the Qin family. The influence I can bring is also extremely limited. If I could make decisions, would I need to wait for you to come to me today? The general family would have long been destroyed. I'm only telling you the outcome. As for how the Qin family will react, that will require you to convince them. Yi Rou turned around and looked into Qin Tian's beautiful eyes. The setting sun outside the window elongated her figure infinitely. Her shadow was cast on the sofa next to Qin Tian. Half of their bodies overlapped, and they looked like a pair of sisters who were very close to each other. I know you're very smart. Everyone knows you're very smart. I believe that there's nothing in this world that can stop you. As long as you're willing, you can do it. It's the same for me. Qin Tian bit his lips and snorted coldly. Are you trying to provoke me? Bring it on. Fang Yan didn't know that the 2 girls were at daggers drawn in Yen capital. All his thoughts and energy were focused on the large fish tank. Ever since his master, Tianjizi, directed his attention to that big fish tank, he had never left that fish tank. He didn't eat, drink, or move. He just stood next to the fish tank, watching every change in the fish tank. He watched the black and red fish bubble, watched them stir the water in the fish tank into whirlpools, watched the calm water, and watched the ripples when the raindrops fell into the tank. Fang Yen had been standing in front of the fish tank for 3 days. No one told Fang Yen if the fish tank was the legendary treasure Tai Chi diagram, but Fang Yen knew very well that it was the Tai Chi diagram he was looking for. What was Tai Chi? Zhuangzi said, above Tai Chi it's not high, below the 6 extremes it's not deep, born in ancient times it's not old. Tai Chi was big. Ji was the end, the extreme point. The fish tank wasn't big enough, and the water in the tank wasn't deep enough. It wasn't that one couldn't see the end of it. However, everything complemented each other and formed a harmonious whole. The fish benefited from the water and the fish. The fish were happy from the water and the tank. The water had a tank and the fish in the tank lived. The fish were alive and the water was flowing. With the living fish and water, the tank became lively. Some people only looked at the fish in the water, but no one ever looked at the tank. What was a tank? It was the foundation and also the core. It was the root and also the soul. It could be the round frame on the Tai Chi diagram, or it could be the inside of the black and white fish. It could be infinitely big or infinitely small. It changed with the number of fish and the depth of the water, but it also limited the number of fish and the depth of the water. It was the sea of energy of Fang Yan's Tai Chi heart, the crazily spinning core. No matter how the fish swam, no matter how the water was stirred, the core would not disperse and the fish would not die. 1 is 2, 2 is infinite. 1 is not a number, it is nothing. It is nothing. It is infinite to begin with, so why regenerate it? Countless kinds of information were gathering in Fang Yan's mind, and countless thoughts were colliding. Some of those thoughts were in pairs, some were in groups of 3 to 5, and some were promoting and nourishing each other. Most of the time they were in conflict with each other, killing each other to the death. The so-called heavenly Tao realm was not a competition with others, but a competition with oneself. If one couldn't even convince oneself, how could one conquer the heavenly Tao? When one's thoughts were clear, it was the day one could step through the door to the heavenly Tao. Fang Yen saw a glimmer of hope, as though he could touch it just by reaching out his hand. But what he needed to do now was to first convince himself. At the courtyard's arched door, on the moss-covered stone steps, several Taoists stood silently. The leader of the group was a Taoist priest who looked extremely old. His old age was a kind of feeling. It was the kind of feeling that made people feel that he was old, that he should have experienced many hardships, and that he should be respected by everyone. However, one could not find any signs of old age on him. This was the return to simplicity that came when one's cultivation level reached its pinnacle. It could also be said to be the Taoist spring returns to a withered tree. Behind him were a few Taoists of different heights dressed in azure-colored robes. They served behind the elder, deliberately maintaining a distance of a step from him. "How long have you been standing there?" the elder asked. "Sect Master, he has been standing there for 3 days, Divine Jizi said softly. "That means that he entered a meditative state on the 2nd day he came to a measurable temple," Sect Master Taichung said in astonishment. "I heard that he and the previous Taiji diagram guardian Mo Qingdi were fellow disciples? How long has Mo Qingdi been staying here?" 97 days, a fat Taoist with a horsetail whisk in hand said. "Mo Qingdi was brought here by me." "All right." Sect Master Taichung wore a faint smile as he asked, "Everyone, why don't you guess how many days this child can stay in a measurable temple?" Mo Qingdi is extremely talented. He has stayed for 97 days, so Fang Yen will naturally stay for more than half a year. That's hard to say. Look at him, he seems to have gained some enlightenment. Perhaps he can return in 100 days, I guess. Divine Jizi gritted his teeth and thought that since Fang Yen was his disciple, he definitely had to support him. He said, 2 months is enough. Chapter 827. The rain stopped and fell and the sky brightened and darkened. The clothes on his body were soaked by the rain and dried by the warm wind. The snail on the ground climbed up to his shoes with great difficulty, but it accidentally rolled down and disappeared. Fang Yen had been standing in front of the vat for 7 days. He could not feel the wind and rain, nor could he feel the cold or hunger. His body had entered a very subtle state, like a sleeping bag filled with oxygen, or a room with burning charcoal in a world of ice and snow. It was warm, comfortable, and relaxed. At first, his thoughts were very chaotic. Countless thoughts emerged and countless information gathered. It was clear who was the enemy and who was the friend. Small-scale fights and large-scale killings emerged one after another. When his head could no longer support itself, when he felt that his body was about to explode, everything quieted down. His mind became a sea of clouds. The white clouds drifted and changed infinitely. Then the scenery suddenly changed, and the sea of clouds turned into a boundless ocean. The ocean was divided into two poles, one as black as ink and the other as white as snow. The black pole and the white pole collided with each other. The black pole wanted to swallow the white pole, and the white pole wanted to assimilate the black pole. The waves were turbulent and the waves splashed. The two big fish were like helpless puppets, pushed to the white pole one moment, and then rolled to the black pole the next. Suddenly, the black pole and the white pole began to spin, and the boundless ocean became a crazily spinning vortex. The vortex spun faster and faster, and finally became a pitch-black black hole that could swallow everything. The wind howled, the rain poured, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. The whole world seemed like it was about to collapse. After an unknown period of time. When everything stopped, the world returned to its tranquility. The black and white poles were torn apart, and then they slowly rotated clearly. A big fish was at the black pole and a big fish was at the white pole. They struggled desperately, trying to break out of the cage, but no matter how hard they tried, they could not meet again. This was the power of nature, the law of the heavenly Tao. When the first ray of morning light cut through the darkness, when the beautiful bird sang its first song, when the flowers bloomed, when the dew dripped on the leaves, Fang Yen finally moved. He crossed his legs and put on an authentic Fang plum blossom stance. He bent his body slightly, opened his arms and hugged the two circles. Then a set of fluent Fang Tai Chi flowed out continuously. Sometimes it was fast, sometimes it was slow, sometimes it was as light as the clouds, sometimes it was as powerful as a thunderbolt. Sometimes she moved up and down, sometimes she was as still as a virgin. White steam rose from the top of its head, and the water in the tank was boiling. The faster Fang Yen hit, the more violently the water in the vat rolled. From time to time, Pisces would jump out of the water and spit bubbles in the air. Fang Yen sensed the changes in his dantian. The heart of Taiji, which was silent like death at times and burning like fire at other times, once again reacted. It was still hot, even hotter than it had been before. It was as if his abdomen had become a furnace, and that furnace was about to burn a big hole in his stomach. But Fang Yen clearly knew that this was a release. As long as the silent furnace was ignited, the charcoal and the fire energy left in the dantian were completely burned away, the volcano would truly be extinguished. Right now it was in the process of burning. He was willing to bear this pain because it was benign and had hope. When Fang Yen slowed down his rhythm, the boiling water seemed to freeze, and the active Pisces sank to the bottom. The plum blossom steps were like plum blossoms. As Fang Yan's body moved, countless plum blossoms bloomed. When Fang Yen finished practicing the Fang 19 paths of Taiji and stopped his breathing, the water tank was filled with smoke, like a celestial palace. Water overflowed from the vat and it flowed endlessly. The water overflow state. Fang Yan's eyes were closed, but there was an intoxicated smile on his face. Fang Yan's clothes were not stained with dust. Fang Yan's face was glowing. He was dressed in a green robe and looked handsome, like a banished immortal. At this moment, the worry that the Jiang family was pressing on him disappeared in a flash, and the ruthlessness from his father's tragic death completely disappeared. The sky was bright, and the courtyard was filled with birds and flowers. The snail that disappeared crawled out from the damp corner, and once again headed towards Fang Yan's shoes. Fang Yan opened his eyes. His pupils were clear and pure, and his cheeks were as tender as a baby's, as if he had just been reborn. Congratulations. An untimely voice suddenly rang out. Fang Yen turned around and looked at his Shifu Tianjizi, who was standing at the arched door of the courtyard. He bowed 90 degrees to him and sincerely thanked him. Thank you, Shifu, for giving me a new lease of life. The water overflows endlessly, and the vital energy never ceases. Tianjizi looked at the water tank that was still overflowing and sighed. You have done something that no one from the Taiji branch has been able to do for hundreds of years. This is a great merit. Fang Yen smiled and said, I didn't think too much before doing this. I only thought that if I could enter the water overflow state, then I would be able to protect myself and my family better. Small things are big things. Tianjizi stepped into the door and said, if I can protect myself and my family, then I can protect everyone in the world. Fang Yen smiled and didn't argue with his Shifu about this. He had already said that he wouldn't accept such a heavy responsibility. However, within the scope of his power, he would act against those who were evil, and he would stop those who were attacking. He didn't want to become a famous hero, but he didn't mind being a good person with a sense of justice. Perhaps his name wouldn't be engraved on the stone wall of Swallow Dock, but he would definitely be remembered by his descendants. There are so many things I didn't expect. Tianjizi looked at Fang Yen. There was surprise in his eyes but even more shock. When I first saw you, I didn't expect you to be able to stand here. When you stood here, I didn't expect you to enter the divinity state so quickly. After you entered the divinity state, I didn't expect you to break through so quickly. 7 days. You only used 7 days to face death and come back to life. Your body was cleansed, your thoughts became one, and you obtained the supreme Tao. Fang Yan, you are the first person in history to do so. Seeing Fang Yan's puzzled expression, Tianjizi smiled and explained, 321 years ago, crazy Taoist priest Jing Xan used 111 days to break the ice. 239 years ago, swift sword scholar used 136 days to solve the puzzle. 167 years ago, Lady Hong Hua of the western region used 298 days to melt the ice. 31 years ago, Dragon God Mod used 97 days to comprehend the Tao. A few days ago, everyone was joking and guessing how long you would stay here. Some guessed half a year, some guessed 100 days. Because we are master and disciple, I always have more confidence in you. However, my answer is 2 months. Tianjizi's expression was somewhat self-deprecating. He said, I didn't expect you to not wake up after entering meditation. I visited every day and waited outside the arched door. It wasn't that I didn't have greater expectations, but I was worried that my expectations would be too high and I would be disappointed. What I didn't expect was that you still succeeded. Furthermore, you only used 7 days. Fang Yan once again bowed to his master, Tianjizi, and said gratefully, Thank you for your concern and protection, master. Without you, I wouldn't be where I am today. Tianjizi raised his horsetail whisk and said, Come with me. The sect master wants to see you. Yes, master, Fang Yan answered. The first time Fang Yan saw the sect master of Taichung, he felt a sense of familiarity. After breaking through, he could feel the depth of the sect master of Taichung's cultivation, as well as the neutral and peaceful aura he naturally exuded. This was a kind and benevolent old man with a pair of eyes that could see through everything. Standing in front of him, Fang Yan felt like he was naked and transparent, with no secrets to hide. The old man's eyes were deep and pure. His pupils were black and the whites of his eyes were as white as paper. There was no yellowish hue, nor were there any traces of blood. His eyes didn't seem like the eyes of an old man. With a gentle smile on his face, the old man looked up and down at Fang Yan, then smiled and said, Heroes come from the young, this saying is indeed true. Fang Yan knelt down in front of the old man and spoke with a clear voice, Thank you, sect master. Get up. Get up. The old man waved his hand and smiled. At my age, what I fear the most is people bowing and kowtowing to me. When others kneel, it makes me feel like I'm already very old and won't be able to live much longer. Just look, who wants to have this kind of worry? The sect master has seen through life and death, why would he care about these superficial things? The old man shook his head, looked at Fang Yan with a firm gaze and said, In this world, are there really people who have seen through life and death? This question really stumped Fang Yan. Whether it's the peasants, the nobles, or the emperors or people who practice martial arts like them, who isn't afraid of death? There's no need to think about it, there isn't a single one. Those who say they aren't afraid of death are all liars. They either lie to others or lie to themselves, they are dishonest. Fang Yan nodded and said, The sect master is right. I am afraid of death. And because I am afraid of death, I work so hard to improve myself, so that I won't be bullied by bad people and not afraid of being killed by bad people. Being afraid of death is also wrong. The sect master corrected Fang Yan's thoughts. Only with loyalty can there be betrayal, only with insignificance can there be greatness. Only with spring and flowers blooming can there be ice and snow, only with death can there be life. Being afraid of death and seeking life, this is not a mistake. But, if you are only afraid of death, then it's easy to become a coward and lose your backbone. This path is absolutely not to be taken. Fang Yan bowed in acknowledgement and said, I have learned something. The sect master looked at Fang Yan and said, You've already reached the water overflow state and become a rare expert in this world. What do you want to do next? Fang Yan thought about it, then looked at the sect master with an extremely sincere gaze, and said with a powerful voice, Go home and get a wife. Chapter 828. Taiji's water overflow realm was equivalent to the inner world's heavenly Tao realm. Those who could ascend to the heavenly Tao were the cream of the crop in this world. Martial artists were like the vast stars, but those who could ascend to the heavenly Tao realm were like the moon. From the stars surrounding the moon, it was obvious how rare the heavenly Tao realm was. There were very few people in the past few centuries who could ascend to the heavenly Tao at Fang Yan's age. It was inevitable for young people to be arrogant and indulgent. After gaining insights into the great Tao and learning divine powers, they naturally had to fight and roam the world. Years ago, after Mo Qingdi succeeded in ascending to the heavenly Tao realm, he had circled the world before returning. Sect Master Taichung believed that Fang Yen would do the same. After obtaining the highest law of Taiji, he would naturally go out to show his prowess and receive victory and glory. He never expected Fang Yan's answer to be, "Return home to marry a wife." Was this something a young man should say? Was this something an expert who had just gained insight into the water overflow realm should say? Did he still have any desire to improve? Did he even talk about the 8 honors and 8 shames? Sect Master Taichung was taken aback for a moment as he asked with uncertainty, "Did you just say, return home to marry a wife?" "Yes, return home to marry a wife." Fang Yen was a little embarrassed. After all, this was his first time marrying a wife. He grinned and said, "A few days ago my family arranged a wife for me. The wedding date has also been set. It's this year on the 8th of the 12th lunar month. Sect Master, if you aren't afraid of the hardships, you can come to our Swallow Dock for a wedding. Take it as an early invitation." Sect Master Taichung roared with laughter as he looked at Fang Yen and said, "All right, if it's convenient, I'll head to Swallow Dock for a wedding. I've already forgotten how many years it's been since I've had a drink. I really miss that taste, other than marriage." "Apart from marriage?" Fang Yen thought about it seriously and said, "It should be to treat Grandpa's illness. My grandpa's legs aren't good, and he hasn't been able to get out of his wheelchair for years. My master said that the Taoist's old would meet spring can cure him, allowing him to stand up again. Now that I've broken through to the water overflow realm, I plan on attempting to treat his legs. If I can let him stand up again, it will mean a lot to me. Your filial piety is extremely valuable," the headmaster said with a gratified expression. Fang Yen watched carefully. As Sect Master Taichung spoke, he flicked his sleeves across the teacup in front of him. The steaming hot tea instantly froze as if it had just been taken out of the freezer. Fang Yen widened his eyes and stared unblinkingly at the hierarch's wrist. "Let's wait and see," the headmaster of Taichung said. Fang Yen saw a white light flashing in his palm, as if he was holding a lightning bolt in his palm. Sect leader Taichung's sleeves brushed past the bowl of iced tea. The ice instantly melted and the tea was still steaming. Sect Master Taichung acted as though he hadn't done anything, but Fang Yen knew that he had done a lot. He had done things that many warriors could not do in their lifetime, including Fang Yen who had entered the water overflow realm. "Do you understand now?" Taichung's Sect Master looked at Fang Yen and asked. Fang Yen nodded, then shook his head. Sect Master Taichung smiled and said, "Close your eyes." Fang Yen did as he was told. Sect Master Taichung's hand brushed past the steaming hot tea and the tea froze. Then he brushed past the iced tea, and the iced tea melted and emitted steam again. It was exactly the same process as before. "Do you understand now?" Sect Master Taichung asked again. "Understood." Fang Yen, who had his eyes closed, said aloud. "Understanding doesn't mean you understand. Without the sun, how can there be ice? Without death, how can there be life? Without withered wood, how can there be spring?" Sect Master Taichung smiled at Fang Yen. "You can understand everything. You were able to comprehend the Grand Tao and break through to the water overflow realm at such a young age, so you will naturally understand the profoundness of withered wood returning to spring." Fang Yen bowed deeply to Sect Master Taichung and said gratefully, "Thank you, Sect Master. I didn't think you would teach me such an ultimate art. Humans are alive, ultimate arts are dead. Only when a dead ultimate art is in the hands of a living person, and it can be used to cure and save people, can it be used to its full potential. Otherwise, a human dying is like an extinguished lamp. No matter how great the ultimate art is, no one can use it. Wouldn't that be a great regret?" "You are right, Sect Master." Fang Yen bowed again to accept the teachings. In front of this old man he couldn't make any jokes. Every word he said was something he had to listen to, and after listening he had to seriously think about it. "In the future, Fang Yen will not hide anything. I will teach everything I know to those who can, so that Huaxia's ultimate art can be passed down from generation to generation, so that the flame of martial arts will never be extinguished. Immeasurable Heavenly Lord." Sect Master Taichung's face was full of joy. He said, "For the best." When Fang Yen came out of Sect Master Taichung's room, his master Tianjizi was waiting in the courtyard. "How is it?" Tianjizi asked. "Very good." Fang Yen didn't hide his joy in front of Tianjizi. He said, "The Sect Master is a very kind and generous old man." "Chem?" Tianjizi looked at Fang Yen with a pensive look. He could understand kindness, but what did being generous mean? The sect master taught me the withered tree that gives spring. Fang Yen couldn't help but boast. Just like a child who got a beautiful toy, he couldn't help but want to let the people around him know about it. Tianjizi was overjoyed. He asked, "Really? Really?" Fang Yen nodded. Tianjizi's expression was solemn. He looked at Fang Yen and said, "The withered tree that gives spring is of great significance to our Taoism. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it is our Taoism's guardian treasure. Furthermore, this withered tree that gives spring was personally taught by the current sect master." "And then? You became the sect master's disciple." Tianjizi stared at Fang Yen and said, "But I am your disciple." Fang Yen said with a determined expression, "Regardless of whether the sect master is the sect master or not, I only recognize you as my master. How can I change my master just because of the difference in status? I, Fang Yen, can't do such a thing, and I don't want to do it." Tianjizi smiled bitterly and said, "But I didn't teach you the withered tree that gives spring." "That's right, why didn't you teach me the withered tree that gives spring?" Fang Yen looked at Tianjizi with disdain and said, "We are already master and disciple. Isn't it natural for me to teach my disciple? Look at the sect master. Even though this is the first time we met, he already gave me such a great gift. No wonder the sect master was able to become the sect master. Look at his heart, his spirit." Tianjizi was about to cry from Fang Yan's questions and said, "Other than the sect master, no one else has the right to teach me the withered tree that gives spring. Why? Because the person who obtains the withered tree that gives spring will become the sect master's personal disciple. And after the sect master ascends, the disciple who has the ability to use the withered tree that gives spring will have the chance to become the sect master." Fang Yen opened his eyes wide and said, "In other words, that's right." Tianjizi nodded with absolute certainty. "Even if the sect master hands the entire sect master to you, no one will think that it's something surprising." Fang Yen was stunned for a long time, then turned around and walked into the room. "What are you doing?" Tianjizi asked. "I'm going to see if there's anything else master needs me to serve. I'm very good at serving tea and pouring water," Fang Yen said aloud. Tianjizi felt like his heart was being cut by a knife. "Didn't you say that you, Fang Yen, definitely wouldn't do such a thing and you don't want to do it? Just what exactly are you doing right now?" Behind the red wall, the old man was leisurely drinking tea. At their level of cultivation and status, there was no longer a need to hone their muscles and bones. Instead, it was more about enlightenment. 1,000 years passed in a blink of an eye. Sometimes, a single enlightenment could surpass countless predecessors. This was the power of the heavenly axiom. Gong Sun Chi's leg injury had completely healed, and he was practicing the sword-drawing technique under the watchful eyes of his master. The last mission had made him realize his own shortcomings. A great teacher produces a great disciple. He had a master like the dragon god, and he himself was talented and intelligent, so he would definitely be the #1 expert of the younger generation. But what made him ashamed was that in that dense forest, his partner Fang Yan's performance was far better than his. Whether it was his ability to adapt on the spot, his ability to fight on the battlefield, or his perseverance and fearlessness of death, they were all beyond his reach. It could be said that if it weren't for Fang Yan's extraordinary performance, the two of them would have died in that devil's forest. The most unacceptable thing was that he was carried out of the forest by Fang Yen. This would be the shame of his life. After his physical recovery, Gong Sun Chi entered an intense period of physical recovery and hard training. He hoped that he could have a greater improvement in the shortest time possible. With a goal, one would be more motivated. "Let's stop for a while." He held the teacup and shouted. Gong Sun Chi drew his sword and then sheathed it. It was unbelievably fast, and one could not hear any sound of metal colliding during the process. Gong Sun Chi placed the sword on the sword rack and pulled a towel to wipe the sweat on his forehead. "Your opponent is Fang Yen?" The dragon god looked at his beloved disciple and asked. Gong Sun Chi was not without talent, nor was it because he did not work hard. At his age, he had achieved such achievements in swordsmanship. It was indeed amazing. However, when comparing goods, one had to throw them away. When comparing oneself to others, it was infuriating. Yes. Gong Sun Chi did not hide his ambition in front of his master. "I want to surpass him." "It's very difficult," the dragon god said expressionlessly. "Master." Gong Sun Chi's face was ashen. He was not angry that his master said he was not as good as Fang Yen, but he knew very well that if his master said it would be difficult for him to surpass Fang Yen, it might really be difficult for him to surpass Fang Yen. "His opponent is me." The dragon god said with a smile. In other words, I am the opponent he must defeat in the end. Chapter 829. Although Gong Sun Chi acknowledged Fang Yan's ability and felt that he was not just slightly better than him, he still found it hard to accept comparing Fang Yan to his most respected master, the divine dragon. Master, what makes Fang Yan worthy of being your opponent? Gong Sun Chi asked bluntly. I know his skills. He's just a little stronger than me. The difference between me and Master is more than 1,000 miles. Compared to Master, he's like a grain of rice competing with the moon. He's just asking to be humiliated. Ku Fengming knew how his disciple felt. He originally thought that Fang Yan was his destined opponent, an enemy that he strived to defeat. And he had always been working hard for this goal. But now he was telling him that it would be difficult for him to surpass Fang Yan, and that Fang Yan's opponent would be him. It was really a blow to him. I've received news that Fang Yan has obtained the Taiji diagram's heritage and has just broken through to the water overflow realm. Ku Fengming said casually as if it was something unimportant. The water overflow is the highest esoteric of Taiji. It's similar to the heavenly Tao realm. Once he enters the realm, he'll be on the golden path. His future is limitless. What? Gong Sun Chi was shocked. How is that possible? How long has it been? How old is he? It was no wonder Gong Sun Chi was so shocked. They had just returned from a mission. At that time, Fang Yan was not too far away from him. The two of them stood on the same starting line and sprinted forward. His injured leg had just recovered, and his opponent had already stepped into another realm? It was impossible for him to catch up to Fang Yan's footsteps. He could only look up at Fang Yan's tall back. It was a feeling that made him feel helpless. A night of enlightenment can lead to a leap of 1,000 miles. How can you look at people with old eyes? Ku Fengming reprimanded. Now that he's finally grown into a towering tree, the feud between me and the Fang family will finally be continued and inherited. He wants to challenge Master? No, I want to challenge him. Shenlong said bitterly. I've been trapped in this red wall for too long. I just want to find a chance to move. But my old friends are all mysterious and hard to find. Fortunately, Fang Yan came out and gave me some motivation to move. Fang Yan had just reached the water overflow realm and was full of confidence and fighting spirit. Go meet him on my behalf and set a date for the battle. I think he'll accept. Master, even if Fang Yan breaks through to the water overflow state, he's still no match for you. Gong Sun Chi looked at his master and wanted to speak up for Fang Yan. After all, Fang Yan carried him out from the Devil Forest. When he first met Fang Yan, he felt that Fang Yan was a bastard. During that mission, he felt that Fang Yan was a good person who was a bastard. He could have left on his own. He didn't have to bring her along, but he didn't give up on her, no matter how dangerous and difficult the process of their escape was. Challenging Fang Yan at this time is an unfair fight. Why don't we give him more time? In your opinion, the longer you live, the higher your cultivation will be? Kuoming shook his head with a wry smile and said, it depends on luck, will and ambition. This was the key to victory. Of course, the strength of both sides had to be evenly matched and the difference couldn't be too great. Don't say anything more, just do as I say. Yes, master, Gong Sun Chi replied helplessly. Just as he was about to pack up and leave, Qin Yao pushed open the door of the small courtyard and walked in. She glanced at Gong Sun Chi, then walked straight to the front of the Dragon God and said, Mr. Dragon God, Fang Yan is here and wants to see you. Fang Yan is here? Gong Sun Chi asked anxiously. He had just been talking to his master about Fang Yan and was thinking of ways to help him reject his master's challenge. Who would have thought that Fang Yan would come knocking on his door? Did he really think that he could do whatever he wanted after entering the water overflow state? Did he think that he could challenge his own master just like that? What an arrogant fellow. Yes. Qin Yao looked back at Gong Sun Chi, not understanding why he was so agitated. Fang Yan has just met the young chief and wants to see Mr. Dragon God after this. Kuoming nodded and said, Fang Yan has broken through to the water overflow state, so the country should pay attention. Invite him in. Yes. Qin Yao turned and left and soon brought Fang Yan in. When Gong Sun Chi saw Fang Yan again, he found that his image and aura had indeed changed greatly. In the past, Fang Yan spoke and laughed casually, but when he was angry he was sharp and aggressive. Moreover, his behavior was not mature enough, and he always gave off the feeling that he was trying his best to take advantage of others. Now Fang Yan was handsome, refreshing, and looked like a beautiful landscape painting. The way he walked was elegant, the way he smiled was charming, and even if he did not say a word, people could feel his inner self-restraint and unfathomable cultivation base. Now, Fang Yen looked more amiable, but when you wanted to bully him, there was an oppressive feeling of having nowhere to exert force and being guarded against everywhere. Fang Yen, what are you doing here? Gong Sun Chi blocked in front of his master and desperately winked at Fang Yen. Hurry up and get lost or it will be too late. Fang Yen understood Gong Sun Chi's intentions. After that life and death experience together, he also regarded Gong Sun Chi as his own brother. However, some words had to be said and some things had to be done. Only by following one's heart could one achieve great things. The water overflow state was even more particular about naturalness. Challenging the dragon god and avenging the Azure Dragon's humiliation was the most persistent belief in his heart, and it was also the mission he wanted to complete the most. The old drunkard was not here, and challenging the dragon god had become his destiny. He would not run away and he could not run away. I'm here to issue a challenge. Fang Yen looked directly at the dragon god's tough life and said with a smile, "It's a long-cherished wish of many years. I hope that the dragon god will be born first." The Azure Dragon turned pale with fright. She did not expect that Fang Yen would take the initiative to challenge the dragon god. Ever since the dragon god entered the Red Wall and became the Xian department's high priest, no one had dared to challenge him. Fang Yen actually dared to do such a thing. Naturally. The dragon god laughed, looked at Fang Yen and said, "Fang Yen, are you so confident that you can defeat me after entering the water overflow state?" "I'm not confident," Fang Yen said very frankly, "but I know that I'm in my best condition now. I don't know what the future holds and I don't know how far I can grow. But I feel that my body is in great shape. It's like I can kill a tiger with a punch and I can knock down a mountain with a kick." Mr. Dragon God has been famous for a long time, and his cultivation base is unfathomable, but I can't wait and I can't afford to wait. Because I know that when I'm training hard, Mr. Dragon God is also improving. I can't wait until you're too old to swing your fist or pick up your sword before I challenge you. This is an insult to you and an insult to me as well. It's also an insult to the old drunkard. If he knew that I did something like that, he would definitely scold me. Exchanging pointers in martial arts requires luck, courage, and willpower. I have the will to fight, I have the courage to die rather than retreat, and the rest is up to luck. My luck has never been bad and people with bad luck would not be able to enter the water overflow state at this age, so I want to take a gamble. When I feel that I'm the strongest, I want to challenge you." Gong Sun Chi stared at Fang Yen dumbfounded and thought to himself, "This kid said the same thing as Master just said. Courage, will and luck, that's what Master said just now." He looked at his disciple Gong Sun Chi and said, "Now do you understand the difference between you two?" Gong Sun Chi's face was ashen. Who would insult his own disciple's master in front of others like this? However, Gong Sun Chi could not be bothered to be angry over such a matter. He was burning with anxiety. His master was a famous heavenly Tao realm expert for many years, and Fang Yen was considered a top expert who had entered the water overflow state. In a battle with such an opponent, he would either be injured or dead, and it would be very difficult to show mercy. Moreover, because the Azure Dragon did not underestimate his enemy, Fang Yen would definitely attack with hatred. When that happened, the two of them would not rest until one of them was dead. Gong Sun Chi did not wish for his master to lose, but he did not wish for his friend to die either. In his heart, he still felt that Fang Yen, who had just entered the water overflow state, was no match for his unfathomable master. The dragon god looked at Fang Yen with a gratified expression and said, "That's how a man should be. I accept your challenge." "Thank you, Mr. Dragon God." Fang Yen bowed in thanks. When he straightened his body, he looked at the dragon god and asked, "What time does Mr. Dragon God think is suitable?" "Time is of the essence." Ming waved his hand casually. "As long as it's convenient for you, I'll accompany you anytime." "How about 7 days later?" Fang Yen said. "Why are you in such a hurry?" "I'm getting married on the 8th of the 12th lunar month, so it's best if we spar before the wedding. That way, if I die, the lady still has a chance to remarry. Don't you think so?" Fang Yen was still a little selfish. He was afraid that it would be tough for him to challenge the dragon god after marriage. If he lost his life, wouldn't Yi Ro become a widow? Therefore he put the final battle before their wedding. In this way, if he accidentally died, Yi Ro would still be a virgin, and she could still marry another handsome young man. He would feel a little uncomfortable in his heart, but as long as Yi Ro was happy, it would be fine. Ming laughed out loud and said, "Interesting." "How interesting?" "We'll do as you say. 7 days later we'll fight at Feng Mountain." The time was set by Fang Yen, so he had no objections to Ming's choice of location. "It's a promise?" Fang Yen said firmly, 7 days later we'll fight at Feng Mountain." Chapter 830. Fang Yin left and Gong Sun Chi offered to walk him out. Under Qing Niao's stare as if she was looking at a lunatic, the two walked towards the side door outside the red wall. Are you crazy? Before they got far, Gong Sun Chi couldn't help but complain, do you know what you're doing? I know. Challenging one of the three dragons of Wuxia, the dragon god, Fang Yin had a calm smile on his face. Gong Sun Chi didn't like this kind of expression. In the past, Fang Yan's smile was very cunning and proud, like a fox that took advantage of others. Gong Sun Chi felt even more friendly towards this kind of smile. At this time he looked very mysterious and no one knew what he was thinking. He was not down to earth and naturally made people feel distant. His smile was like a constant reminder that he was now a water overflow state master, and this was the expression of a water overflow state master. You'll die. Gong Sun Chi stared at Fang Yan's smiling face and said fiercely. Fang Yan looked at Gong Sun Chi and asked, you also think I'm no match for your master? Don't you know that you're no match for him? Do you still need to ask other people's feelings about this? Fang Yan nodded and said, your master has been famous for a long time, and his cultivation is unfathomable. What's more terrifying is that no one has fought him for the past 10 years and no one knows how much he has grown. Against such a master, I really don't have any chance of winning. Then why do you still want to do this? You can choose not to do it or you can do it later. Gong Sun Chi anxiously tried to dissuade him. It was obvious that he was really thinking about Fang Yan's safety. Fang Yan stopped, looked at Gong Sun Chi with sincere eyes and said, in the past I thought the same as you. I can choose not to do it or I can do it later. Why do something that I have no confidence in? Why do something that disregards your own safety? I'm going to get married and I really like the woman I'm going to marry. I want to be with her every day and we'll have several children. That's my ideal life. Gong Sun Chi didn't say anything. He just quietly waited for Fang Yan to continue. But I can't now, Fang Yan said with a smile. I stood in front of a huge vat for a long time and thought about many things. There were many contradictory ideas, and those contradictory laws collided and killed each other. One side triumphed over the other just like one country triumphed over another. I became the king of the victorious kingdom. I comprehended the heavenly Tao and stepped into the doorstep of the water overflow state. However, once you enter that realm, there's no turning back. It's just like when you become the king of a kingdom, you can no longer step down by yourself because once you lose the protection of that position, you may be killed by the rebels. You can only brace yourself and continue forward no matter what you encounter in front of you. You have to walk forward bravely and fearlessly. You also know about the grudge between the dragon god and the one in my family. In the battle between the two, the one in my family suffered a crushing defeat, and because his meridians were cut, he became a cripple. I grew up with him and almost my entire life was spent with him. I could see how miserable his life was and I could feel how sorrowful his heart was. He ate wine every day and slept with wine. That kind of life would have been better off dead. If he had died in that battle, at least he would have maintained the illustrious reputation of the Azure Dragon. However, he didn't die and was still stubbornly living on. When everyone mentions the Azure Dragon's name, they would sigh in regret, saying that a heavenly son of heaven was destroyed in a day, but in their hearts, they were mocking his current situation. Most people would just ignore him when they saw him. Who would care about the opinion of a cripple? Can you imagine? How did he survive such a life? The Fang family is few in number, with only one son for several generations. Back when grandfather was healthy, he had dozens of disciples, and it was considered a formidable force. Later, grandfather's legs were crippled, and most of his disciples left, never to be heard from again. There were a few who stayed, but they didn't have the ability to prop up the Fang family. After the old drunkard ascended the heavenly Tao, the Fang family's reputation changed greatly. However, when he perished and became a cripple, he would receive 10 times, 100 times more mockery and blows than before. My father was killed at the entrance of the village. I was one step too late. If I had arrived earlier, I would have been able to save him. Because of this thought, I stayed in Swallow Dock to observe mourning for my father for 3 years. I felt too guilty and I blamed myself. But what was the old drunkard thinking? If his tendons hadn't been cut by your master, if he was still a heavenly Tao expert, would my father not have died? Would the Fang family not be in such a difficult situation? After my father died, he disappeared. According to the medical fanatic, he went to find some ice dragon's blood to replenish his meridians. I don't believe that such a thing exists in this world, but I hope that he does because if that's the case he will return. Otherwise, with his stubborn temper and proud character, he would rather be buried in that land of extreme cold than return. I always wanted to do something for him. Challenging the divine dragon was an arduous task. In the past, I only dared to think about it in secret, and was even too embarrassed to say it out loud. I was afraid that your master would hear me and kill me with his sword. I always thought, I don't believe that I can't catch up to you, I don't believe that you won't grow old, you won't grow weak, you won't die. That became a demon in my heart, a thorn in my side. In front of that huge vat, I understood. If I had fear in my heart, I would never be able to defeat your master. I would never be able to avenge the old drunkard. The Tao of man is the heavenly Tao. If you go against your own thoughts, then you will be going against the heavenly Tao. Not only will your cultivation level not improve, you might even regress, because you have a mental demon. So, you were able to ascend to the overflow realm because you made up your mind to challenge my master? Gong Sun Chi asked. No. Fang Yin shook his head. I was able to ascend to the overflowing state because my thoughts were clear. I understood the things that I couldn't understand before. I made my final decision on the things that had always made me waver. Of course, the reason I challenged your master was also to make my thoughts clear. If I don't do this, if I keep thinking about postponing and refusing, then I will eventually lose the courage and opportunity to challenge him. I understand, Gong Sun Chi thought for a while, then looked at Fang Yen and said, I won't give you my blessing. I understand, Fang Yen nodded. He patted Gong Sun Chi's shoulder and said, I'm already very grateful that you chased after me and told me this. But Gong Sun Chi thought for a bit and said, I don't want you to fail either. Fang Yen squinted his eyes and smiled, then turned around and left. Clear thoughts. Gong Sun Chi looked at Fang Yan's elegant back and muttered, Master wanted to battle you because he wanted his thoughts to be clear. You came to challenge my master because you wanted your thoughts to be clear. But do you know that the way you are doing it is making it hard for my thoughts to be clear? The news that Fang Yen wanted to challenge the dragon god spread to a certain group of people in Beijing very quickly. Is that kid crazy? Why would he dare to challenge the divine dragon? A horse doesn't know what's good for him. With his mediocre skills, he dares to challenge the 3 dragons of Wuxia? He's far from it. There's going to be a good show. The heavenly Tao realm expert who destroyed the Fang family years ago, Mo Qinglong, probably won't show any mercy this time, right? There was a lot of discussion, but no one believed that Fang Yen could defeat the divine dragon and become the final winner of this battle. The Jiang family mansion. Jiang Shifu looked at his grandson, General Xing, who was sitting in front of him, and said, It seems like the news is true. A few old friends in the martial world called me, and Tigress also has some connections. That brat really went to challenge the dragon god. General Xing grinned. Grandpa, what's there to be afraid of? Isn't this good news for us? Since Fang Yen took the initiative to issue a challenge to Mr. Dragon God, only death awaits him. If Fang Yen dies or gets injured by Mr. Dragon God's hands, our Jiang family will be able to reap the benefits. Previously, the Fang family's Mo Qingdi was crippled by Mr. Dragon God after his tendons were broken, and the Fang family was bullied and humiliated. Until now they have not recovered. If something like this happens again, it will not be anything new. Have you thought about it? Jiang Shifu looked at General Xing with a serious expression and said, Why does Fang Yen want to challenge the divine dragon? What makes him think that he can challenge the divine dragon? You've interacted with him many times. Do you think he's crazy? Or is there something wrong with his IQ? I've heard. General Xing knew that the old man in front of him was angry, so he toned down his attitude and said, Fang Yen broke through the water overflow state and became a powerhouse that can compete with the heavenly path state. If he didn't do this and didn't challenge the divine dragon, our Jiang family would have to adjust our attitude towards him. However, he's courting death by challenging Mr. Dragon. How could he be Mr. Dragon's opponent? Strangling talents is exactly what Mr. Dragon God likes to do. What if? Jiang Shifu asked. What? General Xing did not understand the meaning behind his grandfather's words. If Fang Yen defeats the divine dragon, if Fang Yen wins this battle, Jiang Shifu looked at General Xing with a sharp gaze and asked, Have you thought about what the Jiang family should do when that happens? Chapter 831. General Xing looked at his grandfather with a pensive look and said, Grandfather, are you worried about Fang Yen, the threat he might bring to the Jiang family? One lives in sorrow and perishes in peace. General Shifu did not hide his thoughts as he said, Try your best to think of every possibility so that we won't panic when the time comes. If we don't understand the danger Fang Yen poses as well as the immense influence a heavenly Tao realm expert can bring, it will be a true disaster for our Jiang family. Grandfather, even if he reaches the water overflow realm, he won't be able to live for long. You also know that he just challenged the divine dragon and lived a tough life. In a week he will perish. When that happens, is there a need for us to worry about a dead person? Or perhaps, just as grandfather worries, Fang Yen managed to survive after defeating the divine dragon. Could he be so lawless as to unleash a massacre on our Jiang family? The Jiang family is not their Fang family. If they dare do such a thing, it will cause a stir in the entire Yen capital. How can such a responsibility be borne by a heavenly Dao realm expert? That's not the only thing I'm worried about. The Fang family doesn't just have one heavenly Dao realm expert, but two. Fang Yen is about to marry the Yi family, and the Yi family's Yi Wen is also a heavenly Dao realm expert. If they were to really get married, how would the Jiang family fare? General Xing said with a wry smile. Before it began, no one expected such a thing to happen. Back then, the Fang family could not withstand a single blow, and they thought that they were only devouring a sheep. But no one expected that their Fang family's heavenly Dao realm expert would appear like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. The sheep tore off its disguise and turned into a ferocious wolf that counterattacked. General Xing looked at General Shifu and said, "Grandfather, you never expected such a thing to happen, right?" General Shifu pondered for a long while before saying, "Do you have any good countermeasures?" "The enemy of our enemy is our friend." General Xing said in a deep voice, "The arrow has been shot and there's no turning back. Regret is unnecessary, and an apology won't be of any use. Now, our Jiang family and Fang Yen are in an irreconcilable situation. Now that things have come to this, we can only place our bets on the Dragon God's side." Jiang Shifu thought for a while, then said, "Help me make an appointment with the Dragon God, it's been hard on my life. Just tell him that I want to treat him to Chive's flatbread." "Okay." General Xing nodded. "Grandpa, I'm afraid there's one more person that you have to meet in person." "Jiang?" Jiang Shifu looked thoughtfully at General Xing. He had lived in seclusion for many years, taking care of the flowers and plants in this courtyard. If it wasn't an important matter, he wouldn't meet anyone easily. Moreover, after so many years, the number of people he had met could be counted on one hand. General Xing should understand his habits, but he said that there was someone he had to see. What kind of person was that? "Grandfather?" General Xing's eyes were filled with determination as he looked at Jiang Shifu and said, "We cannot lose this battle." "This is very good." Jiang Shifu looked at his grandson with a gratified expression and said, "I believe in you. Then I'll get to work." The general stood up and said, "I've asked Mr. Dragon God to come over for some pancakes tomorrow night. He probably won't reject me. Go." Old man Jiang Shifu waved his hand and said, "Be careful, don't alert anyone." "I understand." General Xing nodded. At this time, the Jiang family's elderly man and Dragon God were to meet. If Dragon God really killed or crippled Fang Yen after the battle, it would be bad for the Jiang family's reputation. However, General Xing didn't think that this was a bad thing. If Dragon God killed or crippled Fang Yen after meeting his grandfather, how would the outside world view this matter? Yes, it would have a bad impact on the Jiang family's reputation. They might even suspect that the Jiang family was the mastermind. However, shouldn't those people be fearful of the Jiang family because of this? If they could link the Dragon God's hard work with the Jiang family, that would be the best. After Jiang Junling walked far away, the tigress returned to the elderly man. "Old master." The tigress stood respectfully in front of the elderly man. "Make a trip to Huaqing and meet Shangxin personally. Tell her that I miss her and ask her to visit when she has the time." Old man Jiang Shifu said. The tigress looked at old man Jiang with a surprised expression. She didn't expect him to make such a decision. Old man Jiang Shifu's expression was calm, but his voice was a little sad. He said, "The Jiang family's younger generation is incompetent. The last chance to break out of this situation may lie on Shangxin alone. Yes, I will definitely tell Miss Shangxin about old master's longing." The tigress bowed and replied. However, she felt a little sour in her heart. The majestic and incomparably huge Jiang family had actually reached the stage where they needed to prepare a backup plan? "You actually went to challenge Dragon God?" Yi Daoling's face was full of anger as he asked directly. He didn't even invite him to take a seat and instruct the servants to pour him tea. Fang Yen stood in the living room of Yi Daoling's house and looked at the withered ginkgo tree in the courtyard. He smiled and said, "Yes, I didn't expect the news to spread so quickly." "Fang Yen, do you know what you are doing?" Yi Daoling wanted to throw the teacup in his hand at him. "You are challenging Dragon God, Dragon God. I don't need to say what kind of opponent Dragon God is." You know this better than me. Also, after he defeated your senior brother Emochingdi decades ago, everyone in the world thought that he was the #1 expert in Wuxia. Even the mysterious black dragon wasn't his match. Why did you find such an opponent? Yizi sat beside her father and looked at Fang Yen with her beautiful eyes without blinking. This guy is actually an expert in the water overflow state? He was always smiling, he was cynical, and he was always beaten to death by his sister. However, he was humorous, knowledgeable, filial, and loyal. His friends were willing to die for him, he was attentive and cared for his family. He worked hard to protect his family and did not hesitate to fight to the death to protect his family. Such a man was about to become her brother-in-law. Hearing that her father's temper was out of control, Yizi finally came back to her senses. She hugged her father's arm and signaled him not to damage his body. Yizi looked at Fang Yen and said, "Fang Yen, don't mind him. My dad is doing this for your own good. If it was someone else he wouldn't be so angry." "Yes, yes." Ruanjing nodded repeatedly and said, "If it was me the boss wouldn't be so angry." Yizi glared at Ruanjing and signaled him not to talk nonsense. Then she looked back at Fang Yen and said, "You are going to marry my sister. How can you still do such a dangerous thing? If there is an accident, what will my sister do?" Yi Daoling also knew that his temper was too bad. After being comforted by his daughter, his mood was much better. Yi Daoling looked at Fang Yen and said, "Fang Yen, don't blame me for being too strict with you. We are a family now. Say whatever you want. There is no need to hide it like before. I always thought you were a smart person, the smartest person in the entire Swallow Dock. But I have to say that your choice this time is very unwise and disappointing. Yes, I know you entered the water overflow state, but do you think you can definitely defeat the dragon god's hard work just because you entered the water overflow state? You have the heart to avenge the enemy. This is very good and admirable. But can't you bear it a little longer? Wait a little longer? You have endured for so many years and waited. Why can't you wait a few days? Can't you wait a few years? You have achieved such achievements at such a young age. Your future is limitless. No one knows how far you can go in the future. What is the path after the heavenly path? What is the next realm after the water overflow state? When you find the answers to these questions, then challenge the dragon god's hard work. Isn't the success rate higher? You are playing with your life. Not only are you using your life to play with others, but you also don't care about Wenruru's happiness in the future. Now everyone in the world knows that you and Wenruru are going to get married, and the invitations have been sent out. In the end, a few days before the marriage, you ran to fight with your life. Would be fine if you won. The key is that you will die if you fight with your life. At that time, what about our Ruru? Will she get married in the future? I know it's not good. Fang Yen looked at Yi Daoling and apologized sincerely. I know it's wrong. I'm sorry to many people, my family, Yi family, and the person I'm most sorry to is Wenruru, but I also have a reason to do this. What reason do you have to do this? I'm afraid that if I don't do it this time, I won't be able to do it in the future. Fang Yen said with a smile. At least, this is the time that I feel the best about myself and the time that I'm most likely to succeed. Why do you think you can defeat the #1 master of Wuxia? Based on my feelings. Fang Yen said with a smile. I don't think I can definitely win, I just feel that there is a chance of winning. Fang Yen, Yi Daoling looked at Fang Yen sharply and said, if you agree, I can find a way to help you cancel this battle. Absolutely not. Fang Yen looked at Yi Daoling and said, morale cannot be lost. So you're determined to do this? Have you discussed it with Wenruru? Does she agree with you to do such a dangerous thing? She didn't discuss it with me. The courtyard door was pushed open and a girl in black strode in. Chapter 832. It was getting colder and colder in Yanjing. The weather forecast said that the first snow of the year would come in a few days. Of course, the weather forecast didn't specify which day it was. After all, it wasn't easy for them. Her long hair and clothes fluttered in the wind. Even if she didn't wear any makeup, people could still feel her breathtaking beauty. Yi Ro's temperament was very calm, but her face gave people a feeling of coldness. She was like an iceberg, beautiful but always made people worry that she was cold to the bone and not close to the people. Of course, compared with her, Qini Tian was even less close to the people. Qini Tian was very warm but too warm. Her beauty was like the sun in the hottest days, with millions of golden rays, without any concealment, and without mercy, unscrupulously burning the earth in people's eyes. But why did Yi Ro come at this time? Seeing Yi Ro coming, Yezi quickly ran to greet her, took the initiative to hold Yi Ro's arm and said with a smile, Sister, you're here. I knew you would come. Only you can stop Fang Yen. Yi Daoling also grinned, looked at Yi Ro and said, Ro Ro is here? Did Yezi call you? Quickly persuade Fang Yen not to do such a stupid thing. Isn't it good to have a good birthday? There is no need to make things difficult for yourself. Yi Ro walked straight to Fang Yen, looked at Fang Yen and asked, You want to challenge the dragon god? Fang Yen looked straight into Yi Ro's eyes, nodded and said, Yes, I have to fight. Why didn't you discuss it with me in advance? I was afraid you wouldn't agree. Why 7 days before the wedding? I was afraid I would die. Yi Ro stopped talking, and her beautiful eyes stared at Fang Yen without blinking, as if she wanted to see how many hairs there were on his face. Go back with me. Yi Ro said expressionlessly. Okay. Fang Yen nodded. So Yi Ro took Fang Yan's hand and turned to leave. Fang Yen smiled at Yezi and followed Yi Ro out of the Yi family's courtyard. Yi Daoling and Yezi were stunned. Yi Daoling looked at Yezi and asked, Just like that? Just like that? Yezi nodded. Just like that? Yes. Why did they leave? Is the problem solved? I don't know. It should be solved. Sister Ro Ro is here. According to her character, she will definitely not agree to this matter. Besides, Fang Yen can't beat Sister Ro Ro. At most, he can break his legs. Yi Daoling rubbed the rim of his cup in annoyance and said, Even if you want to leave, shouldn't you tell me? No matter what, I'm still their elder. Aren't they not behaving like juniors at all? Yi nodded fiercely and echoed, Yes, it's too much. Yi Daoling looked at Yi with a face full of smiles and said, My own daughter is still the best. It seems that only us, father and daughter, will be eating at home today. I'll ask the kitchen to make a few more dishes. Let's drink the remaining half bottle of Maotai. I can't bear to drink it when you are not at home. Dad, I can't accompany you for lunch today. Yezi said with embarrassment. I want to go back to Swallow Dock. Ancestor called me yesterday and said that she misses me. She asked me to go back to see her. I also want to see whether Sister Ruru has intercepted Fang Yen. How about letting Ruan Jing eat with you at home? I'm willing to eat with the chief. Ruan Jing tried hard to force a smile on his face and said, But Yezi, it's not safe to drive back alone, right? How about I drive her back to Swallow Dock? Get lost. Yi Daoling slammed the cup on the tea table and waved his hand. Get lost. Dad, I will go back to accompany Ancestor. I will say hello to Ancestor for you. Yezi stuck out her tongue and ran outside quickly. Ruan Jing looked at Yi Daoling carefully and said, You are the chief. You told me to get lost. I can't disobey the order, can I? After that, she ran outside like a rabbit. Yi Daoling looked at the empty house and suddenly felt a little lonely. He thought about it and grabbed the landline next to him to call his wife. Come back after work at noon? The child is not at home. Let's go out to eat something good. Yi Ro drove and Fang Yen sat in the passenger seat. Yi Ro didn't speak and Fang Yen also remained silent. There was a song playing in the car, a song that sounded a little sad. If it's too late before dark, I'm going to forget your eyes, spend a lifetime, can't finish a dream, waking up from a dream. This life is absurd. South Mountain. North Autumn is sad. South Mountain has a pile of grain. South Wind whispers. North Sea has a tombstone. This song is very nice. Fang Yen broke the silence and said with a smile. Although it sounds sad, the feelings in it are very sincere. There is a couple in love. The man lives in North Sea and the woman lives in South Mountain. They are in a long-distance relationship. One day the man told the woman that he likes someone else and wants to break up with the woman. The woman was heartbroken, but she still accepted the arrangement. The man didn't fall in love with another woman. He was just sick. It was a genetic disease in his family. At this time it was difficult for him to even breathe. Few of his family lived past 30 years old, and it was difficult for him to break this curse. He was about to die. He didn't want to drag that woman down because he felt that he couldn't give him happiness. Yi Ro said calmly as if she was telling a story. Of course she was indeed telling a story. And then? Fang Yen was attracted by Yi Ro's story and asked. There is no then. Yi Ro said. Fang Yen was anxious and said, How can you do this? How can there be a story without an ending? Aren't you a eunuch? Are you touched? Yi Ro ignored Fang Yan's doubt and asked. Yes. Fang Yen nodded. I'm touched. That man is too great. What about that woman? Yi Ro asked. Woman? Fang Yen thought for a while and said, He has a woman who loves him very much, and Fang Yen couldn't continue. He understood the deeper meaning of Yi Ro's story. Do you think that woman will be grateful after knowing the truth? Will she thank that man for hiding it from her? Will she thank that man for letting her go? Gentle. Afraid that I would be worried and would challenge the dragon god without discussing with me. Worried that I would be a widow, so he specially chose the date of the battle 7 days before the wedding. Shouldn't I be moved like that woman? I didn't do it for you. That man didn't do it to make that woman feel touched. Maybe he thought that was the way he could give her happiness. I just thought that if I couldn't come back you would still have a chance. A chance to marry someone else. Fang Yin remained silent. He couldn't have an answer to such a question. Is this the Yi-Ro in your eyes? I know you won't choose that, but I hope you can choose that. Fang Yin said in a low voice. Since the battle with the dragon god was a foregone conclusion, there were some things that needed to be clarified. I have a reason to fight, but you also have an excuse to give up. I know there are some things that you aren't looking forward to, but standing in my shoes, it doesn't mean that I won't do it just because you don't look forward to it. Gotcha. Yi-Ro suddenly turned the steering wheel, and the car sped towards the wheat field by the side of the road. When they reached the depths of the wheat field, Yi-Ro slammed on the brakes and the car came to a screeching halt. Yi-Ro turned to look at Fang Yin and said, I'm also at the heavenly Tao realm. I can completely understand why you made such a decision. The arrow is knocked on the bow and it has to be fired. But shouldn't you discuss it with me before making such a decision? You said that you didn't discuss it with me beforehand because you were worried that I wouldn't agree to it. But even if I didn't agree to it, since you had already decided to do it, all I could do was support you. I wouldn't let you give up because I knew that you definitely wouldn't back out. Since I was certain that you wouldn't back out, why did you say such words to dampen your resolve? You chose to have the duel 7 days before our wedding. If you were to unfortunately die in battle, I wouldn't need to marry a dead person. Yi-Ro would still be a free person. Yi-Ro's eyes were filled with intense sorrow. She looked at Fang Yin and said, My body is free, but what about my heart? Fang Yin, if you were to die in battle, do you think I would still be able to walk away without any worries? Fang Yin, let me tell you my stance. Human Tao follows the heavenly Tao, and the heavenly Tao is the Tao of the heart. I won't stop you from fighting the divine dragon with your life. If this can make one's thoughts clear, then I have no choice but to do so. Just like how I couldn't sever my ties when I climbed the heavenly Tao, I'd rather not step into the heavenly Tao because my ties are with you. If you are injured in this battle, then we can fight again after you return to recuperate. If you were to die in this battle, I'll wear white and challenge the divine dragon to avenge you. If I win, then the divine dragon will die. If I lose, then I'll die with you. Although we're not married yet, we're already engaged. From the day you went to the Yi family to send the betrothal gifts, we're a family. Life and death are bound together, a promise made to my son. Holding my son's hand, we'll grow old together. These words are not written to be read, not spoken, but to be fulfilled with the rest of my life. If you're alive, I'll be your wife. If you're dead, I'll still be your wife. If you're alive, we'll work together to revitalize the Fang family. If you're dead, I'll take care of grandpa and mother for you. Except for Fang Yin, no other man can enter my eyes. Chapter 833. If you are injured in this battle, then I will wait for you to come back and recuperate before fighting again. If you die in this battle, I will wear a white robe and challenge the dragon god to avenge you. With such a loving and capable wife, what else can I hope for in life? Fang Yin was moved to tears. He opened his arms and wanted to hug the torturous little goblin Yi-Ro into his arms. Fang Yin's body seemed to have encountered an invisible qi wall. His head was bounced off by the qi wall, but his body couldn't get close to Yi-Ro at all. Fang Yin looked at Yi-Ro, who was close at hand but difficult to approach, and said with a smile, Ro, what are you doing? Come, let your husband hug you. But I am still very angry? Yi-Ro said while looking at the wheat sprouts in the wilderness. Those wheat sprouts were shivering in the cold wind, and so was Fang Yan's body. Fang Yin felt the danger and looked at the woman who was about to become his wife with vigilance. He asked in a low voice, Then I will let you calm down? Okay. Yi-Ro agreed without any hesitation and didn't beat around the bush at all. It was as if he didn't hear Fang Yan's words at all and was just testing the waters. Ro, I am just joking with you. Before Fang Yin finished his sentence, Yi-Ro didn't seem to move, but a majestic aura emitted from her body. It was like a sudden explosion of energy bomb, and Fang Yin, who was unprepared, was directly blown away. Clang. The door swayed, and because it couldn't bear the gravity, it looked like it was about to break away from the car. Fang Yan's body tumbled in the air, and then suddenly stopped in the air, violating the principle of free fall. It was as if someone hung a hydrogen balloon on top of his head, or he was stepping on a pair of flaming wheels. His long robe fluttered, and the hem of his robe fluttered in the cold wind. Fang Yan's hair hadn't been trimmed for a while, and now it looked a bit long. They flapped their cheeks haphazardly, covering the left half of the eye. At this moment, Fang Yan really had the cold and arrogant demeanor of a peerless expert. Of course he was a master of a master. Yi Ro unfastened her seatbelt and jumped out of the open window. Her feet landed lightly on the thick roof of the car. Fang Yan saw Yu Ruru chasing after them. Obviously she didn't want to give up. She said hurriedly, "Ruru, let's go back and fight. It's not good to fight and kill in public, right?" Yi Ro ignored Fang Yan and punched out. An invisible mass of air shrouded Fang Yan. Fang Yan kicked out in the air, and there was a violent collision of air currents in the air. The sizzling sound was incessant, as if something was being burned. However, there were no sparks in the air that could be seen with the naked eye. In the distance there was the sound of gas bursting. A big pit was blown up in the wheat field, and a large area of green wheat sprouts was covered with black soil. It seemed that they would never show up again. The first punch was just a test. When Fang Yan kicked away the mass of air, Yi Ro stretched out her hand and pulled the Dragon Striker whip from her waist. The whip was like a long snake. It swung in the air one wave after another, and it curled toward Fang Yan's body. Fang Yan knew how terrifying Yi Ro's whip was. His body, which had stopped in the air, rose again. A cold wind blew and his body moved with the wind. He pounced toward Yi Ro's inner core at a speed that was hard to be seen by the naked eye. Clatter. The sound of firecrackers rang out. It was caused by the long whip tearing the air. Yi Ro shook her right wrist and the long whip in her hand spun back. The tip of the long whip seemed to have eyes. It hissed and bit toward Fang Yan's back. Fang Yan felt a chill run down his back. Even if his palm hit Yi Ro, he would be pierced by her whip. Moreover, he didn't dare to hit Yi Ro at all. Therefore, he turned 180 degrees in the air and gave up on attacking Yi Ro with the cloud-expelling palm. Instead, he reached out to grab the tail of the long whip. The tip of the long whip landed in Fang Yan's palm, but he felt a heat flow from his back. His qi and blood were tumbling in his body, and his organs were almost displaced. With a muffled groan, his body was like a rocket that had failed to launch, quickly smashing towards the ground. Plop. Fang Yan's body crashed heavily into the wheat field. With the spot where he fell as the center, the wheat sprouts and soil within a radius of tens of meters were sent flying by the irresolvable force. It was fine if he didn't move, but once he did, it shocked everyone. This was the power of the heavenly Tao realm. After Yi Ro sent Fang Yan flying with a slap, her body flew horizontally again. Her feet returned to her original position on the roof. It was as if she hadn't moved at all. "Don't think that I'll show mercy just because you don't fight back," Yi Ro said coldly. Half of Fang Yan's body was in the soil. He tried his best to raise his head, wiped the soil off his face and spat out the mud in his mouth. Looking at the lofty Yi Ro, he said with a smile, "How can a man hit his wife? Vent your anger. Even if you beat me to death, I won't do anything to you." "You beat me in the past too," Yi Ro said. "Yeah. At that time, you weren't my wife yet," Fang Yan said with a self-righteous expression. "I didn't know whose wife you would become. You bullied me, so I naturally fought back. A man can be beaten to death by his wife, but how can he be beaten to death by someone else's wife?" Yi Ro sneered and said, "Then I'll let you experience the true power of the heavenly Tao realm." Yi Ro flicked the whip in her hand, and the soft whip that could be used as a belt turned into an indestructible spear. Due to the immense force injected into the spear trembled violently. It was like a snake that was unwilling to be at the mercy of others. The spearhead buzzed as it darted forward again and again, in a bid to escape the terrifying woman's control. The spear's shaft was enveloped in a layer of white haze. The white haze turned green, red, and deep purple. The spear in Yi Ro's hand looked like it was about to burn. Yi Ro held the spear in one hand as she stretched out her other hand's slender middle finger to gently flick the end of the spear. Bang! A soft sound was heard. When the spear left her hand, a shocking scene appeared. It formed a purplish-red trajectory in the air. The trajectory was like a smear of mud in midair. Even after the spear left, it didn't dissipate. Sizzle. The spear became the source of incinerating everything. The surrounding air was swept over by it before being burned. The wheat sprouts on the ground, the black soil that maintained the wheat sprouts, the rocks that were wrapped in the black soil, and the ugly and innocent earthworms were swept over like moths to a flame before vanishing instantly. Not even a puff of white smoke could be seen. Skyfire ablaze. This was the true power of the heavenly Tao realm. It was the ultimate power of the world, or it could be said that they shouldn't even exist in this world. They should be weapons in the hands of sky gods, the will-o'-the-wisps of hell, a taboo for humans. However, a group of humans had broken the barrier and personally obtained this taboo power that came from a foreign land. The spear was silent. It didn't need to make any sound. However, no one could ignore its existence. This was because it was like a comet with a gigantic tail. It was coming at Fang Yen with an unstoppable might that could incinerate everything. It wouldn't rest until one of them was dead. Fang Yen sensed danger as his flesh tensed up. Every hair on his body seemed to stand on end. Although the spear had yet to reach him, Fang Yen already felt like he was being burned by an inferno. The heat wave hit him in the face, and the hair on his face and head gave off a burnt smell. This woman? Fang Yen cursed through gritted teeth. This woman must be crazy. How could she use such a killer move? Is she planning to murder her husband? Fang Yen was very worried that he wouldn't die at the hands of the divine dragon, but at the hands of his future wife, Yi Wenro. The Taiji heart that had been silent for a long time began to spin once again. The black and white Taiji fishes spun crazily before turning into a transparent crystal. On the surface, the crystal didn't seem to move at all, as though it had solidified. But in fact, its motion had been upgraded, turning into the motion of dark matter. Dark matter was a type of matter that was smaller than electrons and photons. It didn't carry any electric charge and wouldn't interfere with electrons. It could pass through electromagnetic waves and gravitational fields. It was an important part of the universe. The density of dark matter was very low, but the quantity was huge. Therefore, its total mass was very large. It represented 84.5% of the matter in the universe, of which the matter visible to humans only accounted for less than 10% of the total mass. In scientific terms, this was dark matter freely moving within. But in the eyes of martial arts practitioners, this was a sign that the body's potential had been developed to the limit. The cyclone had become a body of energy. It had become a tangible energy gate that could continuously extract energy. Fang Yan's knees were slightly bent, his hands were spread out, and his feet were drawing circles on the ground. He displayed the invincible drunken crane riding the wind to the extreme. His body had already turned into an illusory shadow. The shadow became fainter and fainter until it was almost transparent. The long purplish-red trail of the spear pierced through the shadow, leaving a colorful trail in the middle of the shadow. From afar, the trajectory of the spear through the air and through the transparent shadow looked like a beautiful picture of a spear piercing through a heart. Chapter 834. Although Ruanjing and Yi were a step behind, they quickly caught up. Ruanjing drove while Ye's eyes kept searching. Ahead. Their car is in the wheat field. Yi shouted as she pointed at the car in the wheat field. They're fighting. They're fighting. Yi shouted even louder as she pointed at Fang Yen and Yi Ro who were flying in the air. Ruanjing had already seen Fang Yen and Yi Ro. As he drove the car over, he answered Yi, I saw it. They're really fighting. Let's stand further away? Ruanjing stopped the car far away and looked at the purplish-red rainbow that appeared in the sky. He said with his mouth agape, It's over. Your sister has used a killer move. Is this move very powerful? Yi didn't know much about martial arts, but she could still sense the murderous aura from afar. She felt her body tense up and her heart beating violently. She would have such a feeling when watching horror movies, but it was obvious that this wasn't a horror movie. The scene of Fang Yen and Yi Ro fighting in the wheat field was still very beautiful. Impressive. Ruanjing nodded solemnly. There's a rainbow. What's its name? I don't know. Ruanjing knew that he had been despised by Yi. He explained with a flushed face, Although I don't know its name, I know that this move must be very powerful. Think about it. How can a heavenly Tao realm expert's killer move not be powerful? Yi nodded and asked worriedly, Don't tell me my sister really killed Fang Yen? How is that possible? Ruanjing grinned and said, Fang Yen is your sister's man. How can she kill him? She wouldn't be happy even if others wanted to kill her. You sure aren't worried at all, Yi said with a roll of her eyes. Then why did she use a killer move on Fang Yen? It's to feed him a move, Ruanjing said. What do you mean feed him a move? It's sparring practice. It's to let Fang Yen familiarize himself with the might of the heavenly Tao realm and the various possible attacks, Ruanjing said with a smile. He really wasn't worried at all. This group of brothers had watched Fang Yen and Yi Ro grow up, and it was also this group of brothers who had watched them get together. After loving and killing each other for so many years, their feelings were much more intense than ordinary people's. Yi Ro was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. She was dedicated to Fang Yen. How could she kill Fang Yan at this moment? I see. Yezi nodded and said, do you mean that my sister won't kill Fang Yan no matter what? Of course, Ruanjing said. Unless there's only one possibility. What possibility? Yezi was a little nervous again. Ruanjing looked at Yi doubtfully and said, if Fang Yan doesn't resist or if he can't resist, then the killing move might really kill him. Leaf exclaimed. Ruanjing, hurry up and stop them. Don't let them fight anymore. Ruanjing wore a bitter look and said, you want me to mediate a fight between two heavenly Dao realm experts? Indeed, a woman's heart is the most vicious. Who are you calling a woman? You are the woman. You don't even dare to mediate a fight. Just as Ruanjing and Yezi had seen, the spear that was manifested from the whip flew across the sky, pulling out a purplish-red rainbow in the air. The rainbow was like colored powder smeared on glass. It looked like it wouldn't disappear anytime soon. There was a strong charred smell in the air. It was the smell of air, wheat sprouts, black soil, and rocks being incinerated. Although it was difficult to even see their corpses being incinerated, the flaming spear pierced through the translucent body, as though it had pierced through Fang Yan's heart. Then the spear kept moving forward, and the huge thrust supported it to fly to a place far, far away. Fang Yan's body vanished from the spot, as though he had been incinerated by the flaming spear. However, there wasn't any horror in Yi Ro's eyes. Her body remained standing on the roof of the carriage. The cold winds howled and her long hair fluttered. She looked like a witch that could destroy the world at any moment. Strange ripples appeared in the place where Fang Yan had just disappeared. Then a huge cyclone appeared in the air. The cyclone became slower and slower, turning into a transparent figure. As the speed of the cyclone slowed down, the figure became clearer and clearer. Fang Yan appeared again. It was very magical and it looked very strange. Fang Yan seemed to have gone to another time and space to hide for a while. After the danger passed, he came back. Fang Yan's body floated in the air. His feet didn't touch the dust on the ground. He was handsome, confident, and elegant. There was a faint smile on his face. It was as if he had just returned from a perfect vacation. Fang Yan looked at Yi Ro on the roof and said, this is the power of the Great Desolation and the most primitive power in the world. It's invincible and invincible. It can devour and incinerate everything it encounters. I thought it was just a legend. I didn't expect it to be real. The water overflow state is also very good. Yi Ro raised her chin slightly, looking very proud. At least you're good at running away. Fang Yan laughed out loud and said, I've been made fun of by my wife. Then I'll show you what the real water overflow state is. When Fang Yan spoke, he had become transparent in an instant. Yi Ro quickly turned around and slapped out. Their palms collided in midair, producing a dull sound. It turned out that when Fang Yan spoke, he had already changed his position. Before he finished his words, he had already launched an attack on Yi Ro from behind. Crack, crack. The two of them were fighting more fiercely. It's so exciting, Yi Ro said excitedly. Ruanjing nodded and said, yes. Half an hour later. They're all so powerful. Ruanjing nodded and said, yes. 1 hour later. Have they finished fighting? Ruanjing shook his head and said, no. 2 hours later. Haven't they finished fighting yet? Ruanjing shook his head and said, no. Go back to sleep. I'll call you when they're done. 3 hours later. Yi Ro opened her sleepy eyes and asked, what's wrong? They're done, Ruanjing said. Oh. Yi Ro leaned back on the chair and fell asleep again. We're going back, Ruanjing said. Yi Ro looked outside and was shocked. She said, wow, they're so powerful. They destroyed a wheat field in the field. Ruanjing opened his mouth and didn't know what to say. Yi Ro was still driving. Fang Yan's body slumped in the passenger seat. I can't bear to hit you, Fang Yan said in a weak voice. Yi Ro ignored him and drove with a serious face. I mean it. I can't bear to hit you, Fang Yan emphasized again. By the time the group returned to Swallow Dock, lunchtime had long passed, and it would be time for dinner in a while. When Fang Yan returned home, Yi Ro followed him to the Fang family's house. Ruanjing and Yi Ro didn't hesitate and followed them. Lu Wan looked at Yi Ro as if she was her future daughter-in-law. She took Yi Ro's hand and asked her why she came back so late and if she had had lunch. Yi Ro said no, so Lu Wan went to the kitchen and asked the servants to cook. Fang Yan touched the bleeding wound on the corner of his mouth and wanted to cry. He was injured so badly. Didn't his mother see it? Was she really his real mother? The future mistress wanted to eat, so the chef's speed was first class. She made some home-cooked dishes and a pot of rice. The four of them were so hungry that they gobbled up the food. Ruan Jing had just finished his third bowl of rice when the pheasant and mushroom soup was served. Only after everyone drank another bowl of soup could they be considered truly satisfied. Ruan Jing took a tissue and wiped his mouth. He looked at Fang Yan and said, "I have to go back to deal with something." He looked at Yi Ro and asked, "Do you want to go with me?" Yi Ro glanced at Yi Ro and said, "Sister, I'll go back to talk with the old ancestor." After that, they bade farewell to Lu Wan and left. Fang Yan looked at Yi Ro and Yi Ro also looked at Fang Yan. Lu Wan looked at Fang Yan and Yi Ro and seemed to suddenly think of something. She said, "I also have an appointment with your aunt to discuss the wedding. You two have a rest. I'll go to talk with my aunt." After that, she left with a little girl. Now there were only Fang Yan and Yi Ro in the living room. Fang Yan looked at Yi Ro and said, "Don't you have a rest?" Yi Ro stood up and said, "Come here." "Okay." Fang Yan nodded and stood up. Yi Ro pushed open the door of Fang Yan's room. After Fang Yan passed by her, she closed the door and locked it. Yi Ro stood at the door and said to Fang Yan, "Go take a bath." "Okay." Fang Yan nodded again. He didn't dare to resist because he was afraid that Yi Ro would beat him again. When he walked to the door of the bathroom, he suddenly came to his senses. He stared at Yi Ro and said hesitantly, "Ro, it's not good. It's still early and my mom may come back at any time. How about we wait a little longer?" Yi Ro looked at him expressionlessly and said, "I said take a bath." Okay. If you are in a hurry we can close the curtains." Fang Yan trotted into the bathroom. "Idiot." A charming smile appeared on Yi Ro's face. Chapter 835. Indulge in the night, tell me it's hard to find you, turning back is a dream, still passive, escape, stare at you but deeply annoyed, ah. Fang Yan coughed violently and water poured into his mouth. Fang Yan took a quick shower with a little joy in his heart. He used a towel to wipe his hair and the water stains on his body. Then he walked out of the bathroom in clean pajamas. Yi Ro sat on the bed looking at him with a strange look, with a rare shyness on her face. "Get on the bed," Yi Ro said. "Okay." Fang Yan answered, moving to the bed with small steps, climbed on the bed with his butt up, and then closed his eyes, lying on the bed with his body spread out. Lying on the bed, some lewd pictures came to his mind, and a dot appeared under the word big, which became 2. Fang Yan felt a little embarrassed thinking, "How can I do this?" But then he thought, this is what a real man should do, if not, Yi Ro must think there's something wrong with me. "Turn over and lie on your stomach," Yi Ro said. "Okay." Fang Yan was about to change his position. When he was about to turn over, he suddenly felt this behavior was a little inappropriate. He could love endlessly, but he couldn't accept such humiliation. Fang Yan lay back down. He looked at Yi Ro timidly and said, "Why don't we just lie down? You can lie on top. You must lie on your stomach." Yi Ro's attitude was very tough. "I'm not used to that, you'll get used to it." Fang Yan was angry and shouted, "Yi Ro, I'm telling you, although I don't want to hit you, it doesn't mean I can't beat you. I'm a man and I've given up my pride and self-esteem to let you lie on top, but you're still not satisfied. You want me to lie on my stomach? Why do you want me to lie on my stomach? What can you do?" "Apply medicine." Yi Ro looked at Fang Yan as if looking at a lunatic and said these 2 words softly. Fang Yan's body instantly stiffened, and he immediately closed his eyes. However, when she thought of how Yi Wenru was still staring at her from the side of the bed, she closed her eyes. Wasn't it the legendary act of burying one's head in the sand? Thus, Fang Yan opened his eyes again. Fang Yan bravely looked into Yi Wen's eyes and said, "I know you're applying medicine. But can't I apply it while I'm lying down?" "The palm I used to hit you was on your back," Yi Ro said expressionlessly. Fang Yan felt that he was really stupid. How could he think of anything else? Yi Ro was his fiancée, a woman who would soon become his wife. No matter how impatient she was, it was impossible for her to get on him at this moment. Of course, it was impossible for him to do such a thing. So Fang Yan turned over and exposed his back to Yi Ro. Yi Ro smeared the brown ointment on her palm, and then gently rubbed it on the spot where the blood clotted on Fang Yan's back. After applying the ointment evenly, she began to massage the clotted blood with her palm. There was a cyan light flashing in the middle of her palm, and a scorching warm current flowed on Fang Yan's back. Fang Yan felt a burning pain on his skin. He knew that Yi Ro was using her internal force to help him improve blood circulation and remove blood clots to repair the damage to his internal tissues. This woman didn't hold back when she hit him, and she didn't hold back when she treated him. If you use a little more force, I won't have to fight against the dragon god this time, Fang Yan said with a smile. If I use a little more force, you won't have the chance to fight against the dragon god anymore, Yi Rou said. Fang Yan covered his head in the pillow, smiled shyly and said, I know you don't want to do it. Crack! Yi Rou suddenly slapped him, and a dislocated bone on Fang Yan's back was reset. Ouch! Fang Yan cried out in pain. Anything can happen, Yi Zichen said. Yi Rou's palm continued to massage the injured spot on Fang Yan's back, and there was a gentle smile on her lips that Fang Yan couldn't see. This time, I believe you. Fang Yan lay there and didn't dare to move. I didn't do my best, Yi Rou said softly. I know. Fang Yan said with certainty, although you've tried very hard, you don't have killing intent or fighting spirit in your heart. So it's hard for you to use your full strength. I have killing intent, but I also have fighting spirit. So he's a very scary opponent, Fang Yan said in a low voice. Fang Yan, Yi Rou said softly. If you really want to, what am I thinking? I'm not thinking anything, Fang Yan quickly denied. This was too scary. Could it be that this woman had guessed his thoughts? Crack! Another spine on Fang Yan's back was restored by Yi Rou. Feng Mountain, also known as Wind Mountain, was located in the Red Canyon far away from Yanjing. Apart from the maple trees all over the mountain, there was also the sandstorm from the north. Feng Mountain was the first stronghold to stop the sandstorm from invading Yanjing City. No one lived here and there were only a few tourists. Occasionally, a few backpackers came to enjoy the scenery of the Red Canyon. When they set up camp and prepared to cook, they found that a thick layer of sand quickly fell into the pot as soon as they put it on the fire. Unable to hold on, they packed their bags and fled in panic. Feng Mountain was more lively today because someone was going to fight here. Ever since Fang Yan went to challenge the dragon god, the news that both sides had agreed to fight in 7 days at Feng Mountain had spread. Many people had come here in advance to survey the terrain and find out the truth. Some people started setting up early. They drove their cars, prepared their tents, and settled down in a place with a beautiful view. Some people tried their best to climb, guessing which slope or which peak Fang Yan and the dragon god would fight on. After all, Feng Mountain was so big and stretched for hundreds of kilometers. If they were too far away, they would miss the exciting duel. Most people gathered at the foot of the mountain and waited until they confirmed the location of the duel between Fang Yan and the dragon god before approaching. Most of the people who knew about the duel were influential figures in Yanjing City. Their circle was small, but there were many people. Everyone knew each other, so it was common to see such a scene. Hey third brother, you're here too? What's up? Who do you bet on? I bet on the dragon god. Young Master Zhang, come here. Try this red wine I brought. I know you like it. I'm sure you'll be satisfied. 3 twos, I bet 3 twos. Why are you betting on a pair of kings? Are you stupid? Have you figured out who's the landlord here? Velai Peak. This was the loneliest and steepest peak in Feng Mountain. It was high and dangerous and there was almost no road. It was said that several groups of mountaineering enthusiasts wanted to conquer Velai Peak, but they were all conquered by it. After a life was lost, those people finally gave up on this place with all kinds of legends. Of course, such road conditions couldn't stop Fang Yan and the dragon god's hard life. The person accompanying Fang Yan was Yi Rou. Originally, he wanted to come alone, but after Yi Rou glanced at him, he immediately understood what she meant. Maybe it was because the wedding day was approaching, but they were getting along better and better. Fang Yan felt that he understood Yi Rou better and better. In the past, he only knew that Yi Rou would beat him up when she was unhappy. Now he knew that Yi Rou might beat him up whether she was happy or not, so Fang Yan took the initiative to invite Yi Rou. Yi Rou nodded and agreed readily. The dragon god's hard life was accompanied by his disciple, Gong Sun Chi. On one side was his master and on the other side was his savior. Gong Sun Chi was most unwilling to see this duel. Even though they had already arrived at the venue, the way he looked at Fang Yan still made Fang Yan feel a strong, pleading. His eyes could speak and he was telling Fang Yan, stop fighting, go back. Go back to your own home, find some vegetables and fight as you want, abuse as you want. Fang Yan felt that Gong Sun Chi was really his good brother. Fang Yan was dressed in white, which was his special request. Because he liked Shimen Shueishui and Gu Long's wuxia novels. No matter which door he was in, since it was snowing, it was more appropriate to wear white. In Fang Yan's mind, Shimen Shueishui must wear white. If he wore black, yellow, red, or purple, it would not be worthy of such a cool name. The dragon god's hard life was still dressed in a gray robe. When Fang Yen first saw him, he was wearing the same clothes, and now he was still wearing the same clothes as if he had never bought a new set of clothes. His body was skinny, and his hands were folded in his sleeves. Standing on the top of the mountain, he looked like he would be blown away by a gust of wind. Gong Sun-chi walked in front of Fang Yen, looked at Fang Yen and said, "You've decided you won't change your mind?" Fang Yen patted his shoulder and said with a smile, "I can understand how you feel, but you should also know that when we last met, I had already made up my mind." The dragon god saw this scene and sighed, "My disciple Dragon God's hard life is still not as good as Green Dragon Emo Chindi's disciple. This duel is inevitable, why say so much?" Fang Yen glanced at the dragon god's hard life and said, "Gong Sun-chi is just more sentimental than I am. He is willing to care about the fate of others, but I care more about my own fate. You sure know how to defend him," the dragon god said with a smile. His gaze fell on Yi Ro, who was beside Fang Yen, and said, "I heard that Fang Yen is going to marry Miss Yi. One family with two heavenly laws. This is something that has never been heard of for hundreds of years. It will definitely be a great story in the future." Yi Ro looked at the dragon god's hard eyes and said in a cold voice, "If you kill him, I will definitely kill you." Chapter 836. If you kill him, I will definitely kill you. Yi Ro's words were sonorous and powerful. It did not make sense to make such a threat before the duel. However, according to Yi Ro's usual character and style of doing things, it was not strange at all. Besides, the last time the Divine Dragon battled with the Azure Dragon Emo Chingdi, it was a friendly duel, but the Divine Dragon broke the tendons of the Azure Dragon Emo Chingdi's hand, making him wish he was dead. Who asked this old fellow to have such a record? The mountain winds howled and sand filled the sky. Hearing Yi Ro's words, the Divine Dragon's expression did not change, nor did he show any anger. He looked at Fang Yen with a smile and said, "You have a good wife, it is a great blessing in life." Fang Yen nodded and said, "You don't have to be envious, it's useless to be envious anyway. At your age it's probably not easy for you to find a wife, right?" "Aha!" The Divine Dragon laughed out loud and said, "That makes sense, it really makes sense. At my age it's probably not easy for me to find a wife, let alone a good wife in the heavenly Tao realm." The husband and wife ganged up to bully his master, an old man who had never even married a wife in his life. This was unacceptable to Gong Sun-chi. He could not be angry at his savior, Fang Yen, so he targeted Fang Yen's wife Yi Ro. "See, straight men are so cute." What a joke. "If Fang Yen is killed by my master, will you be able to avenge Fang Yen? Why do you think you are better than Fang Yen?" Gong Sun-chi sneered. When he spoke, the direction of his nostrils indicated the target of his attack. Yi Ro glanced at Gong Sun-chi and said, "What right do you have to speak? What do you mean? If you were slightly more powerful, would you still need your master to fight Fang Yen personally? Yi Ro, do you dare to accept my challenge?" Gong Sun-chi gnashed his teeth, wishing he could cut Yi Ro into two pieces right there and then. He really felt pity for Fang Yen. Such a good man, handsome, charming, humorous, skilled in martial arts and loyal, how could he fall into the hands of such a woman? How could he be happy in this life? "I dare not," Yi Ro refused on the spot. "I don't compete with people of lower realms." Gong Sun-chi drew his sword on the spot, ready to fight to the death with Yi Ro. "Gong Sun-chi." The dragon god tried his best to stop him. "Stop messing around. Master, she's going too far." Gong Sun-chi roared with a red face and neck. "What's wrong with being ridiculed because your cultivation isn't good enough? Only by knowing shame and courage can one become a master of a generation." The dragon god worked hard and did not hesitate to stab his disciple in the chest. Gong Sun-chi really wanted to go down the mountain. There was no way to continue watching this fight. The dragon god looked at Gong Sun-chi and said, "When you reach the top, all the mountains are small. The most important thing is the process of climbing. When you reach the top, there is no one around you, no one to talk to. How lonely and helpless will that be? When you can't see the stars and the moon in front of you, how will you have the direction to chase? How will you have the motivation to chase? It's a happy thing to have an opponent to defeat and surpass. How boring is it to have never been defeated in life?" Gong Sun-chi's face turned serious, he bowed respectfully to his master and said, "Master, your disciple understands. Your disciple will definitely focus on cultivation and climb to the heavenly realm in the future." The dragon god nodded to his disciple and said, "You have the talent, it's only a matter of time for you to climb to the heavenly realm, but you lack training and the hardships of putting yourself at death's door. This will hinder your climbing to the heavenly realm." The dragon god pointed at Fang Yen and said, "As the saying goes, the children of the poor become responsible early." Although Fang Yen has experienced many setbacks and challenges, it has honed his temperament and aura. That's why he entered the realm at such a young age. You are my disciple. This helped you in the early stages, allowing you to improve quickly and have a solid foundation. But it also hurt you in the later stages. You can only progress slowly, and you lack the surprise of reaching the heavens in one step. Fang Yen was a little unhappy. He thought, this old man doesn't even know how to praise someone. Who are you calling a child of the poor? My family was rich back then, okay? Now my family is even richer, okay? Gong Sun Chi was deeply inspired. He looked at the dragon god and the dragon god with sincerity and said, "A teacher for a day, a teacher for life. To be able to become master's disciple is the greatest fortune of my life. No matter what, I will continue to work hard. Even if it's a little slow, it doesn't matter. I think one day I will climb to the heavenly realm. Your disciple will definitely not embarrass master." The dragon god grinned and said, "With these words of yours, our relationship as master and disciple has not been in vain." The dragon god seemed to be bidding farewell to his disciple. After he was done, he looked at Fang Yen and said, "I haven't moved in a long time, and I don't usually have the thought of exercising with great fanfare. So, in this battle, I hope you can let me have a taste of failure. Fists and legs have no eyes, killing or mutilating depends on your means." The dragon god's voice was very calm, and when he spoke, there was a faint smile on his face. However, it gave off a tough feeling that was hard to ignore. The dragon god, usually looked low-key and amiable, like an approachable little old man. Only at this moment did he reveal the aura of a heavenly Tao realm in his fangs. Killing or mutilating depends on your means. This sentence was very straightforward, and it was also very magnanimous. It was 1,000 times more magnanimous than Yi Ro's. "If you kill him, I will definitely kill you." The dragon god was a domineering person who saw through life and death and was willing to give up everything, while Yi Ro was a domineering person who cherished him excessively and wanted to make him stay. Both were very precious. Fang Yen nodded and said, "To be honest, I don't blame you for breaking the old drunkard's tendons, because if I had one today, I would have done the same to you." The dragon god laughed again, looked at Fang Yen and said, "You're really an interesting guy. I'm full of expectations for you. The wind is cold in the high mountains. Are we going to start? If this goes on, this old man's body won't be able to take it anymore." Fang Yen turned to look at Yi Ro, looked straight into her beautiful eyes and said, "I'll be right back." "Okay." Yi Ro nodded. "If I don't come back, I will avenge you and then raise your parents. There's something else I need your help with, but I don't know how to ask. Speak. Our Fang family has only one child for generations. If I don't come back today, when you have children in the future, can you choose one of them to be surnamed Fang?" The muscles on Yi Ro's face twitched and she asked coldly, "Do you think the child's father will agree?" Fang Yan's expression changed drastically and he said, "Are you really going to have children with him?" "Why not?" Yi Ro looked straight into Fang Yan's anxious eyes and said, "If that man is Fang Yan." Fang Yan stretched out his arm, and Yi Ro lay in his arms like a little bird. There was no shyness, nor was there any violence. It was so natural, filled with reluctance. Gong Sun Chi glanced at his master and then quickly looked away. He thought, "Master doesn't need to do this, right?" Yi Ro and Gong Sun Chi began to retreat, and they only stopped when they reached the edge of Flying Peak. Even this place wasn't considered safe for two heavenly Tao realm experts to fight. However, they were powerful themselves. As long as they didn't directly participate in the battle, just some forces and rocks wouldn't be able to harm them. Fang Yen and the divine dragon stood facing each other. One side's clothes were whiter than snow, and they were moist like water. However, the water wasn't a stream, but a vast ocean that surged without end. The other side wore a heavy gray robe, and he had a steady and unshakable aura. Both of them had their auras converged, and not a single bit of their forces leaked out. Even so, they still gave off an unreachable sense of distance. Fang Yen was smiling and so was Tiafeng. Both of them were smiling naturally and casually, without any signs of danger. Fang Yen placed one hand behind him, and the other made an inviting gesture and said, "Mr. Divine Dragon, please go ahead. Young man, don't stand on ceremony." The divine dragon said with a smile. As he spoke, he tapped the ground with his toes, and a rock shattered into countless pieces. The countless rocks turned into countless weapons, and as if they had eyes, they stabbed at Fang Yen in front of him. "This shameless old man," Fang Yen cursed in his heart. Although he said that the young man shouldn't stand on ceremony, His hands were already attacking the young man without restraint. Fang Yan waved his hands and waved them in the air. Then a huge balloon was pushed forward. Crack, crack. The gravel hit the huge invisible balloon and bounced back, shooting at the divine dragon. At the same time, the balloon drifted towards the divine dragon desperately, as if it was going to envelop the entire divine dragon inside. With a smile on his face, the divine dragon stretched out a finger and poked at the balloon. Master, Gong Sun Chi's heart almost jumped out of his throat. He was not sure about the strength of the water overflow state, but he knew that there was something else to this balloon. As long as his master's body touched this balloon, it would explode and tear him into pieces. Poof! The divine dragon tried his best to tap the balloon with his finger. Just like a soap bubble blown by a child, it disappeared in the air without a trace. There was no explosion and no one was torn apart. This made Gong Sun Chi confused, but he could not ask anyone else. After all, she was the only one present who could answer his questions. He did not want to ask her. This exchange was completed in the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint. Both of them only lifted their toes and waved their arms. During the battle, both of them stood in the same place and did not move at all. Everything returned to normal. The divine dragon looked at Fang Yan and said with a smile, "This is considered a warm-up, right?" Fang Yan nodded and said, "Warm-up complete." Chapter 837. The foot of Feng Mountain was bustling with noise. Master Zhang, did they start fighting? Did they start fighting or not? Who knows? There wasn't even a bird, let alone a human. I say, someone like the dragon god wouldn't go up the mountain through this path, right? They stood on the peak after a few leaps and bounds. Do you think this is a fantasy film? No matter how powerful they are, they're still human and they have to walk properly. I heard they went to the Ghost Sorrow Peak and some people are climbing there. Should we go and take a look? The dragon god is too much. Why didn't he do a live broadcast of such a big battle? If we stay here, they won't even know when the battle is over. Why don't we set up a big screen here in the Grand Canyon for a live broadcast? We can buy tickets to enter, drink beer, eat barbecue and have a few pretty girls. He's not economical at all. Do you think this is a challenge tournament? What kind of master is Mr. Dragon God? I heard he's like a god who can kill a big tiger with one punch. Beijing. A villa in the suburbs. Qin Yiqian held a cup of tea and stood on the edge of the corridor, looking at the undulating peaks in the distance. Those peaks belonged to the sphere of influence of Fragrant Mountain and were far away from Feng Mountain. However, she was watching with deep focus, as if the battle of the century that she had been longing for was taking place there. She wasn't like the other rich young masters, who drove luxury cars with famous wine and beautiful supermodels to protect them. She knew the meaning of this battle and she also knew what defeat meant. However, this battle was beyond her ability. Moreover, with that woman by Fang Yan's side, even with Qin Yiqian's arrogance, he had to admit that she was more suitable than him. My battlefield is not there. Qin Yiqian retracted her gaze and said to herself, "This is an unfair world. Some people are born high above and have everything. Some people struggle their whole lives but end up poor and destitute. Some people enjoy the blessings of multiple lovers and some people give their hearts but don't get any warm response. I know you're not satisfied. You think you work harder than them, you think you're smarter than them and you put in more effort than them." But he didn't receive any special treatment from others. It was as if everyone in the world had their eyes on that person. It's like a clown in a circus. You try your best to perform the funniest performance and the most difficult action, but all the audience is attracted to a guy who is acting as a puppet. They gave him flowers, applause and riches. You, on the other hand, are unknown, doing what you have done countless times. Yes, it's unfair. I feel that the world is too cruel to you. But unfair things happen every day and poor people appear every day. Why should I give you such a chance? In the Phoenix Orchid Grove in the courtyard stood a man completely shrouded in a black robe. He stood there motionlessly as if he had become one with the phoenix tree. However, his eyes were bright. This was the only proof that he was still alive. "Because I think you're more valuable than them," Qin Yiqian said coldly. "High and mighty without any feelings. So, prove to me the value of your existence." The man bowed slightly and disappeared from the courtyard. Mu Ying walked over and stood behind Qin Yiqian. He followed her line of sight and looked at the mountain peak in the distance. He asked, "Is he trustworthy?" "Of course not," Qin Yiqian answered without hesitation. "Would you trust a blade?" "Young lady, what do you mean? I'm only giving him a chance to prove himself. I don't trust him at all. Trust is a very precious word. I have to give it to the people I care about the most. I understand, Muing nodded. Has the battle begun? Qini Tian asked. Our people have arrived at Feng Mountain, but they haven't found the exact location of the battle between Fang Yen and the Dragon God. This is also their intention. They don't want anyone to disturb them except for the two sides. But as soon as they have a result, they will send it back immediately. Qini Tian didn't deny it. She handed the teacup to Muing and said, I'm going to take a bath. Muing took the teacup and continued to guard the place. He knew that countless people were waiting for the final result. Watching. Lu Xiaoge finished his work and walked to the courtyard for a few steps to get some fresh air. That's good. At least I can take a breather now. The Lan clan of Lan Mountain Valley, the Lu clan of Willow Tree, and their Chaoyan technology were all in great danger when the Jiang clan suddenly launched an attack on them. Any carelessness and they could be destroyed or devoured by them. Coupled with Li Ye's kidnapping and Du Qing's imprisonment, the ironclad alliance they had painstakingly built in Huaqing was almost dismembered. Without Huaqing to support Fang Yen, how could they fight against the Jiang clan in the future? Fortunately, at the most critical moment, the Qin clan jumped out and helped them offset the majority of the Jiang clan's attack and attracted the Jiang clan's main firepower. But the situation still wasn't optimistic. The Jiang clan was still the Jiang clan, and the Qin clan didn't intend to start a full-scale war with them. It was already difficult for them to protect themselves. To defeat the Jiang clan, they didn't even know how to start. But if Fang Yen won, it would be tough for him. Lu Xiaoge didn't know martial arts, but she was a smart woman. She knew how to judge the situation. She was very clear that the success or failure of this battle would determine the success or failure of Chaoyan technology and the existence of the ironclad alliance of Huaqing. If Fang Yen was defeated or killed in battle, would the Qin clan still be willing to support them like this? Would Lan Mountain Valley and Lu Shu, who were fighting together with them, still advance and retreat with them? If Fang Yen was no longer around, how much loyalty would they have left to this side? The worst-case scenario was that, when they realized that the situation wasn't right and smelled blood, they might turn red and counterattack, becoming their biggest enemy. As an outstanding manager, as Fang Yan's representative in Huaqing, he had to have this sense of crisis. He could only keep this thought in his heart, in the deepest part of his heart. He couldn't even let his current battle partners know about it. He had to be fully prepared. Lu Xiaoge was very tired. But at this moment she suddenly relaxed. She felt that it was a little strange. Fang Yen was fighting a decisive battle in Feng Mountain, and his life was hanging by a thread. Shouldn't she be more worried? Shouldn't she be under more pressure? Soon she figured out the reason. She gave up, or rather temporarily gave up. Because the decisive factors were all gathered on Fang Yen. Fang Yen bore all the pressure for them. If Fang Yen won, then they would naturally sound the horn to counterattack and fight to the death with the Jiang clan. But if Fang Yen lost or Fang Yen died, their efforts in Huaqing wouldn't have much meaning. With just them, they couldn't stop the attack of the Jiang clan or other forces. This had nothing to do with how hard they worked. Only now did Lu Xiaoge truly realize the importance of Fang Yan's existence to them. That young man, that delicate man with thin shoulders, the man who idled around all day and was complained that he didn't do proper work, was actually supporting and protecting them in his own way. Fang Yen, Lu Xiaoge looked at the gray sky. Today's weather wasn't very good. There was no moon or stars in the sky. However, the night breeze was cool, so it didn't make people feel depressed. Lu Xiaoge held her stomach and said softly, "You must live." Swallow doc. The teacher was used to sleeping early. If there was nothing else, he would eat dinner at around 8 o'clock every night, boil a bucket of hot water, soak his feet and then lie in bed to sleep. Of course, he was also the earliest to get up in the village. When the people of Swallow Dock were still in their sweet dreams, he had already gotten up with a manure basket on his back to pick up feces. There were many domestic animals in Swallow Dock. The animals wandered around and defecated everywhere. However, the people who came to Swallow Dock would feel that it was especially clean. It was rare to see any animal feces, because they were all picked up by the elders of Swallow Dock, led by the teacher. The night was gloomy and the weather was cold. The teacher who lived at the entrance of the village was the first to bear the brunt of the cold. The north wind blew, almost sweeping up the straw mat in his thatched cottage. The teacher stood in the middle of the courtyard, wearing a fox skin. He looked up at the sky and muttered to himself, "It's probably going to snow heavily before the Laba festival." He held an enamel jar in his hand, which contained a large amount of tea leaves. After taking a big gulp of the tea leaves, the teacher looked at the green mountains in the distance and sighed, This child is still too impatient. But isn't the water overflow realm in line with the heavens? If I had severed my mortal thoughts back then, where would I be now? Since Fang Yin has the confidence to challenge the dragon god, it means that he is fully prepared. He will soar to the heavens tonight. Fang Clan. Fang Clan's ancestral hall. Fang Huwei, the old master of the Fang Clan, didn't have dinner that night. In the evening he asked his eldest son-in-law to push him in, then chased his son-in-law away and closed the door of the ancestral hall. Before this he had already abstained from meat and wine. He knelt in front of the plaque of the Fang Clan's ancestors and prayed devoutly. He didn't believe in ghosts and gods, but he still hoped that they could protect his grandson. Fang Yin will win. Chapter 838. This was a world where looks mattered. Jia Zhaoqiang was short and fat and he stuttered a little. According to the natural elimination law of society, it was not easy for a man like him to find a partner. However, if he was the second young master of the Jia family in Yanjing, it would be a different story. Jia Zhaoqiang knew where his disadvantage was. Compared with other handsome playboys, he felt that he was too simple and honest. Therefore, in order to make up for his shortcomings, Jia Zhaoqiang especially liked to spend money. Anyway, he had secretly calculated that according to his current daily consumption level, the existing assets of the Jia family were enough for him to squander for 365 years. Even if he gave 265 years to his elder brother, he still had 100 years to enjoy. Jia Zhaoqiang was very worried that he would not live to 100 years old. Therefore, Jia Zhaoqiang put in a lot of effort when he spent money. For example, this time, in order to enjoy the much-anticipated Battle of Feng Mountain, Jia Zhaoqiang brought a team of Hummers. There were 2 bodyguards from the famous security company Golden Shield Security. In fact, he did not need bodyguards at all. However, rich playboys and young ladies all brought bodyguards. If he did not bring 2 bodyguards, wouldn't he be looked down upon? There was a chef and a personal assistant, red wine produced by a centuries-old Bordeaux wine cellar, a charcoal oven, and a rising B-list star, Li Qing, whom he had arranged a time earlier. Naturally, Jia Zhaoqiang gathered with other playboys. They drank and bragged and then took beautiful girls to the tent for wild sex. After Jia Zhaoqiang drank 2 bottles of wine and ate a few pieces of fat but not greasy lamb legs, he became interested in that aspect. He dragged the star named Li Qing into the tent. Li Qing followed Jia Zhaoqiang with infinite shyness in the midst of the playful teasing of those playboys. Whoosh! A white shadow flashed in front of Jia Zhaoqiang's eyes, rolling up a cold wind and attacking Jia Zhaoqiang's body. Jia Zhaoqiang stood there for a long time and asked, "Did you see anything?" Li Qing was busy acting shy. How could she notice anything else? So she shook her head and said, "What? I didn't see anything?" Jia Zhaoqiang rubbed his eyes and said, "It seems that there is nothing, let's go in. You only know how to scare people." Li Qing pinched Jia Zhaoqiang's fat arm. It was more like she was scratching and flirting with him. "I really saw a shadow," Jia Zhaoqiang said seriously. Seeing Li Qing's tender and alluring little face, Jia Zhaoqiang felt that there was really no need for him to waste time on some insignificant matters. So Jia Zhaoqiang held Li Qing's little hand and said, "Maybe I'm seeing things. Come quickly, I'm in a good mood, I'll let you enjoy yourself today." Pa! A black object flew towards Jia Zhaoqiang's face. Jia Zhaoqiang couldn't dodge in time, and his fat face was hit by the object. "Who is it?" Jia Zhaoqiang shouted. "Who the F***ck hit me?" He reached out his hand to touch his face, and there was a layer of greasy stuff on his palm. He placed it in front of his nose and sniffed it. It smelled like roasted mutton. Jia Zhaoqiang looked at his feet. It was the leg of lamb that he had thrown away earlier. He kicked the leg of lamb away and shouted at the top of his voice, "Who the F***ck threw something at me? What's going on? Are you not satisfied with me? If you're not satisfied, come out and fight me one-on-one. Don't you think hiding in the dark and doing this kind of thing is too shameful?" Although Jia Zhaoqiang was fat, he wasn't stupid at all. He had already calculated in his heart. In this area, there were only 3 families that the Jia family couldn't afford to offend, and one of them was a woman. The other 2 families were stationed slightly further away from him. Even if they wanted to hit him with a roasted mutton leg, they probably didn't have the strength to do so. Therefore, the people who could throw a mutton leg at his face were naturally the people that the Jia family wasn't afraid of. "Jia, who hit you? What are you shouting about? Even a small celebrity can't shut your mouth? Old Jia, if you don't go, I won't be polite anymore. Li Qing happens to be my type. Why don't I swap places with you?" Li Qing pulled Jia Zhaoqiang's arm and whispered, Brother Chang, let's go in. I'm scared. Jia Zhaoqiang rubbed his face that was hurting from being hit by the mutton leg and said, Son of AB***, don't let me know who did this shameless thing. If I find out, I'll definitely cut off the pig head meat on your face piece by piece. After saying that, Jia Zhaoqiang was about to enter the tent with his butt in the air when his butt suddenly tightened. Slap. Something hard smashed into his buttocks. Jia Zhaoqiang suddenly turned around and shouted, Who? Who did this? Come out right now. If you have the guts, fight me one-on-one. I'll skin you alive today. Their employer was attacked, and the two retired bodyguards naturally ran over to protect him. Young Master Chang, it's a mutton leg. One of the bodyguards used a knife to pick up the suspected murder weapon from the ground and reported to Jia Zhaoqiang. Damn it. Jia Zhaoqiang looked at it and realized it was the mutton leg that he had just thrown out. Now Jia Zhaoqiang couldn't curse anymore. He had a creepy feeling in his heart. They were stationed at the edge of the canyon. There was a river at the edge of the canyon called Red River. When Jia Zhaoqiang threw the mutton leg, it was thrown in the direction of the Red River. In other words, this roasted mutton leg should be lying quietly at the bottom of the Red River. Why did it appear again? And it hit my butt? The more Jia Zhaoqiang thought about it, the more scared he felt. Young Master Chang, should we search the area? The other bodyguard asked. Brother Chang, let's go in. What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that? Li Qing saw Jia Zhaoqiang's pale face and eyes filled with fear. Jia Zhaoqiang grabbed Li Qing's hand and said, Go back, let's go back now. Brother Chang, are we not going to watch the final battle? Not anymore. Let's go. Drive. Go and drive. Ada and Aquan are in our car. Be careful. Yes. The two bodyguards didn't know what was going on, but they agreed readily. To be able to squeeze in the same car with the beauty Li Qing was something they couldn't ask for. Although Li Qing couldn't jump to the top, in the eyes of these bodyguards, she was already an unapproachable big shot. After warming up, it was time to get down to business. Shenron's body disappeared on the spot, then suddenly appeared in front of Fang Yan. Shenron struck with his palm. It was an ordinary palm. Fang Yan reached out to receive it, but it was too late. That palm pressed against his chest. The heart of Tai Chi spun naturally, and the chi in his body leaked out wildly. Then it gathered at the chest that was about to be hit by Shenron's attack. Pa! That palm hit a transparent ball of light. It was like a firefly that was freed from a bottle cap. Starlight scattered in all directions, and Fang Yan's body was also sent flying out. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Fang Yan, who was in the air, was still dizzy. He hadn't been able to react or adapt to the rhythm of the attack. Fang Yan's eyes were still watching the moment Shenron disappeared, but Shenron had already arrived in front of him. When Fang Yan saw Shenron coming to him, he had already struck with his palm. When Fang Yan saw the ordinary palm that the divine dragon had painstakingly unleashed, he raised his hand to block it. However, the palm was already about to land on his chest. If it wasn't for the heart of Tai Chi, which spun naturally when it was in danger, forming a protective ball of air in front of his chest, that stream of air would have blocked Shenron's palms. Although in the end they were smashed into pieces by Shenron's seemingly ordinary palm, but they still managed to protect Fang Yan's vital points and saved Fang Yan's life. Otherwise, who would be willing to suffer Shenron's palm for nothing? Fang Yan's body kept flying. He flew over Yi Ro's head, over the forest, over the boulders, and was about to fly out of the range of the mountain to the cliff where he missed his footing. Fang Yan knew the height of Feilai Peak. If he were to fall, he would definitely die. He forcefully gathered his chi and leaped into the air, taking large strides towards the peak of Feilai Peak. It looked like a celestial being sprinting in midair. Pa Fang Yan's feet landed on the ground, and he felt a sweet taste in his throat as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Fang Yan, are you alright? Yi Ro asked anxiously. Yi Ro was also a heavenly Tao realm expert. She had also watched the duel from a close distance, so she could understand how miraculous Shenron's palm strike was. No, he didn't look miraculous at all. His disappearance was very ordinary, and so was his palm strike. There was no flying sand and rocks, nor was there any thunder or lightning. He had just struck out his palm in such an ordinary manner. However, there was no way to dodge or block it. Even if she were to deal with that palm strike, she would probably end up being sent flying, right? Is this the true strength of Shenron's Shenron? Yi Ro thought worriedly. If that was the case, did Fang Yan really have a chance of winning? Fang Yan. Gong Sun Chi had just shouted Fang Yan's name when he hurriedly shut his mouth. Fang Yan was his master's opponent. How could he be overly worried about him in a battle between the two of them? Your eyes are deceiving you, Shinran said in a deep voice as he looked at Fang Yen with great difficulty. Chapter 839. Your eyes are deceiving you. The dragon god looked at the injured Fang Yen and said, You didn't see me. I didn't see you. Fang Yan's expression was solemn as he said in a low voice, You saw me disappear on the spot. I wasn't me at that time. You saw me appear in front of you. I wasn't me at that time either. You saw me attack. I wasn't me at that time either. The human eye will create some illusions for the brain. Some illusions are formed naturally. Some are created artificially. Everything you saw was created artificially. I understand. Fang Yen nodded. Now I've thought it through. The ripples you created when you disappeared were illusions. Then, you used one illusion after another to create a complete attack. But at that time you were already in front of me. That palm strike, I endured that palm strike much earlier than what I saw. Mountain spirit manifestation. The dragon god said with a smile. It's just a small trick. But if it's used cleverly, it can achieve unexpected results. You've just entered the water overflow state. It's rare for you to understand the key to it so quickly. It's the heart of Tai Chi, Fang Yen explained. I thought the heart of Tai Chi would only react naturally when there's danger. Now I understand. My heart of Tai Chi has already started to prepare when it sensed danger. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to block your attack just now. The heart of Tai Chi is a 1,000-year-old lost art. It's indeed extraordinary. However, in these hundreds and thousands of years, there aren't many who could achieve the heart of Taiji. The divine dragon god gave Fang Yen a very high evaluation. You're a rare talent in the Tai Chi lineage. In time your achievements will be limitless. Thank you, Mr. Dragon God, for your praise. Fang Yen said with a smile. He took out a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped the blood stain at the corner of his mouth. The white robe on his body was soaked in red spots by the blood, but there was nothing he could do about it. Who wouldn't bleed in the midst of fighting and killing? If it wasn't his blood, then it was someone else's. Fang Yen put the blood-stained handkerchief into his pocket, looked at the dragon god and said, Let's try again. Look again. The divine dragon looked at Fang Yen with great difficulty and said. As he spoke, the dragon god once again disappeared from the spot. In the air there was the sound of space being torn apart, and the sound of air being wrapped up. The divine dragon once again appeared in front of Fang Yen and slapped Fang Yen's chest. It was the same attack method as before. The sense of rhythm. The dragon god's desperate attacks already had its own unique rhythm. Moreover, he was the one leading the rhythm. Everything was under his control. You could only obey or follow his rhythm. Otherwise, you would only suffer worse consequences. Because his attack was a domain, an illusion. If the domain was broken, it would explode. The shattering of the illusion would leave people at a loss as to what to do. Don't even think about it. Fang Yan's eyes turned cold as he gritted his teeth. This time, no matter what, he would not let the dragon god hit him again. Just as he was thinking this, the heart of Taiji had already started to spin. That transparent crystal seemed to be motionless, but it had already increased its speed to the limit. It was like the sun and moon in the sky that had not moved, but their speed was not something that could be followed by human strength. Waves of warm air broke down from the crystal core and gathered at the spot where the attack was about to hit. They were about to gather into a ball of light again and block the dragon god's desperate attack. Of course, this was the heart of Taiji's natural resistance. Fang Yen also wanted to resist. His body spread out and his feet drew circles on the ground. His body spun into a white ball of light. This time he finally had the time to fully spread out drunken crane riding the wind. His body turned into a ball of feathers, a leaf and a transparent ball of light. When you hit a feather with your fist, would the feather be hurt? No, before your fist even touched the feather, the strong airflow stirred up by your fist would have already sent the feather flying. Fang Yen was the feather that could be sent flying at any time. Of course, this time was different from the last time. This time he was the one who wanted to be sent flying. He was consciously trying to avoid and defend himself. Last time he was accidentally hit and was sent flying. Fang Yen felt that he was well prepared this time. Pa! Another palm hit Fang Yan's chest. The palm was light as a feather, but it suddenly came. It pierced through time and space without any warning. Moreover, Fang Yan's drunken crane riding the wind didn't even have time to dodge this palm. In other words, even if Fang Yen turned into a ball of feathers, the dragon god's desperate palm could still destroy the feather. If he used too much strength, the feather would fly away. If he used too little strength, he wouldn't be able to cause any damage to the feather. However, this choice wasn't too difficult for the dragon god's desperate life. He wanted to hit and he hit. It looked as simple as eating and drinking. Fang Yen tried everything he could and prepared himself, but still couldn't stop the dragon god's desperate palm. And it was the same palm that he had used before. A fight between experts can change in an instant. Once a technique is used too often, it can bring fatal danger to oneself. However, the dragon god's desperate life managed to use the same palm to send Fang Yen flying twice in a row. Fang Yan's body once again flew into the air. Like a kite, he was blown into the air by the wind, then forcefully used qi to twist his body. Whoosh! Fang Yen stepped through the air, once again landing in front of the dragon god's desperate life. The dragon god stared at Fang Yen and smiled. At that time, you shouldn't have forcefully used qi. Fang Yen smiled, but dark red blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Fang Yan's internal organs were injured, and this injury was more serious than the last time. This time it was your brain that lied to you. The dragon god stared at Fang Yen and smiled. Fang Yen once again took out the handkerchief from his pocket and carefully wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Then he folded the handkerchief once again. He folded the blood-stained part inside to prevent it from dirtying his clothes when he put it in his pocket. After he was done with these matters, Fang Yen looked at the divine dragon and said, "I understand." "What do you understand?" the dragon god asked. "I understand how an expert should fight." Fang Yen grinned. He laughed heartily and comfortably. "Yes, this kind of feeling is really wonderful. You only used your finger to poke through a layer of window paper, but you can discover a colorful and wonderful world." The water overflow realm focused on intent and not action. The intent was the soul and action was the bone. In the past, when Fang Yen fought with others, he would always use all sorts of moves to fight with his life on the line. Elbow strikes, crotch kicks, throat grabbing, nothing was spared. It was all to defeat his opponent. But it was different now. Such a method could not injure an expert at the heavenly Tao realm. Just like a figure like the dragon god, he might shatter you with a palm before you could even throw a punch. Forget about moves. There was no need to deliberately remember anything. Just follow the heavenly Tao naturally. The heavenly Tao was the highest law, far surpassing the martial Tao that Fang Yen had painstakingly learned for more than 20 years. Now they should be using intent and aura to fight and not just those moves from before. Otherwise you would be at a disadvantage, always slower than others. Gong Sun Chi came in front of Yi Ro and whispered, "What do they mean? Why did Master say that Fang Yen was deceived by his brain? Can the brain deceive itself?" Yi Ro did not even look Gong Sun Chi in the eye and said with a deadpan expression, "You don't understand." Gong Sun Chi knew that he was here to embarrass himself. They weren't even from the same world as them, so why did they come here? Then, the smile on Dragon God's face gradually disappeared. He looked at Fang Yen seriously and said, "Let us begin for real." Just as he said that, Fang Yen had already appeared in front of him. No, he appeared above him. Fang Yen was flying high above, holding a huge balloon in his arms. The balloon looked like it was corporeal and it even made hissing sounds as it fell. There was gas flowing around the balloon, and when some of it was released, more of it would come in to replenish it. Fang Yen pressed the balloon in his hand towards the top of the dragon god's head. The dragon god's struggling fingers stretched out halfway before he quickly retracted them. His body turned illusory and he disappeared into thin air. Rumble, a huge explosion rang out, and then a strong airflow swept through everything in the surroundings like a sharp blade. The grass was broken, and some of the thicker branches and tree trunks were also directly cut into two by the scattered air currents. The place where Dragon God was standing just now had become a huge pit more than a meter deep. The stench of burnt rocks came from the pit, and some weeds and branches were directly burned into the air. If Dragon God had not dodged in time, he would have been vaporized by now. Dragon God stood on a large protruding rock, looked at the huge pit, and looked at Fang Yen with interest and said, "This is getting interesting." In the cave halfway up Falai Peak, a man wrapped in a black robe sat. He was motionless like a withered corpse, but his ears were slightly perked up, listening to every movement on the mountain top. He was the third party in this battle. Chapter 840. 1,000 cups of wine was too little. To the Dragon God, the current Fang Yen was the only one who could truly be his opponent. The more powerful Fang Yen did not make him panic. Instead, it was something that made him feel happy both physically and mentally. Just as the Dragon God told his disciple, Gong Sun Chi, he had not exercised for a long time. There was no motivation to exercise and there was no opponent that interested him. Fang Yan's appearance made him want to fight again. Just as he was about to let his disciple Gong Sun Chi challenge Fang Yen came looking for him. However, Fang Yen was an expert who had just entered the overflow state. He was like a farmer's boy who had just left the mountain village, only to find out that he was the heir to a billionaire family, and that he was about to inherit a fortune that could rival a country. He was so excited that he bought a sports car, a luxurious villa, and kept a C-list celebrity as his mistress. He felt that his life was too luxurious. In the eyes of the truly rich, he was still a country bumpkin. He did not know how to spend money. In the eyes of the dragon god, Fang Yen did not know how to use the power of the overflow state. He had a mountain of treasures, but he did not know how to squander them. To people like them who valued martial arts as much as their lives, it was a pity. Therefore he guided Fang Yen step by step, hoping that he could find the feeling sooner. Now he saw the results of his labor. Fang Yan's talent was quite high, and did not let him down at all. Of course, if Fang Yen was not talented enough, he would not have been able to understand the deeper meaning of his words so quickly. Congratulations on entering the water overflow realm, the dragon god said to Fang Yen with a smile as he struggled to stand on the protruding boulder. Fang Yen understood what the dragon god meant. At this time he truly had the power of the overflow state. Although he had entered the overflow state long ago in the previous battles, he was still a martial artist who only knew how to use brute force. He would be confused by the illusion created by the enemy, and he would be blinded and led by the opponent's consciousness. He could not be himself. He could not unleash the true power of the water overflow realm. I know how to fight now, Fang Yen said with a smile. He bowed slightly to the dragon god and said, then let me use my ultimate strength to defeat you. Come, avenge Mo Qingdi. That's what I thought before. I wanted to defeat you just like how you defeated Mo Qingdi, Fang Yen said with a serious expression. But now I only want to defeat you. This is the true meaning of this battle. What? Are you not willing to avenge Mo Qingdi? I think he would be willing to settle such a matter himself. Even if I did defeat you, he would only see it as me defeating you and not as me avenging him. Indeed. The divine dragon nodded his head with much difficulty. This is the character of not underestimating the enemy. I found the true meaning of fighting. Fang Yen smiled and said, so, please accept my challenge. As he spoke, Fang Yan's body rose into the air. His figure disappeared in the air, then reappeared in front of the dragon god. Fang Yen slammed his palm towards the dragon god's face. It was a light punch, seemingly without any force behind it. However, after seeing Fang Yan's attack, the dragon god Mo underestimated the enemy's expression became unprecedentedly solemn. This palm was full of concept and power. He formed a delicate balance, an extremely closed and domineering domain. This made the dragon god unable to accept it, but it would not be good if he did not accept it. The divine dragon tenaciously sent out a palm strike as well. It was also a light and seemingly powerless palm strike. Ho! Their palms collided in the air, creating ripples in the air. As their palms approached, the ripples became larger and larger, and the air currents gathered became more and more frenzied. Pa! Fang Yen and the dragon god's palms finally met, like two magnets slowly approaching each other. Like repels, the greater the magnetic force, the greater the force you exert, the greater the repulsive force. Hiss! The air currents stirred up by Fang Yen and the dragon god hissed, like a beautiful shirt that was torn to pieces before it could be put on. This was Fang Yan's domain meeting dragon god's domain. When the air currents in the domain were completely drained, both of their domains could not hold on any longer and exploded at the same time. Boom! The transparent gas exploded. Other than the dust in the air and the large crater on the ground, there was almost no evidence. Meanwhile, Fang Yen and the dragon god Laborious disappeared to the left and right. When they appeared in front of everyone again, it was when Fang Yen grabbed a big ball and slammed it on the dragon god Laborious' head. The dragon god Laborious punched out, and a huge hole appeared in the ball, but it still persisted and shrouded the dragon god Laborious' body. Boom! The ball smashed on the boulder under the dragon god Laborious' feet, and the boulder bore the brunt of the violent force. Huge cracks appeared on the surface of the stone. First, it broke from top to bottom. Then cracking sounds rang out incessantly. Countless small cracks appeared. Finally, the base of the huge stone could no longer support itself and collapsed with a rumble. With his attack missing, Fang Yen did not dare to delay. He quickly turned around, and the dragon god Laborious' palm was already aimed at his back. Fang Yen punched back, and in an instant the two exchanged more than 300 punches and more than 700 kicks in the air. In a flash it was like a thunderbolt. Gong Sun Chi was dumbfounded and said, Is this the heavenly Tao realm? Their strength qi is endless? The cycle is the true meaning of the water overflow realm. Force is like water and the qi in one's body is inexhaustible. The constant flow of force is called water overflow. Yi Ro raised her eyebrows and said, according to this fighting style with their cultivation level, it's normal for them to fight for 3 days and 3 nights. Gong Sun Chi was amazed and said, amazing. We should chase after them bravely and not let them monopolize the glory. Yi Ro did not have a good impression of Gong Sun Chi, and if it wasn't for the sake of supporting Fang Yen, she wouldn't have minded beating him up. If Fang Yen defeated Laborious, Gong Sun Chi would definitely want to avenge his master. When that happened, she would have to beat him up. If Fang Yen was defeated by Laborious, she might have to kill Laborious in order to avenge Fang Yen, and if he wanted to avenge his master, she would still have to beat him up. They were born to be enemies. This contradiction could not be reconciled. Since they were not friends, Yi Ro's tone was not polite at all. Work hard? Yi Ro's voice was cold and she said, but some things can't be done with hard work. Boom! A thunderous sound once again resounded in the air. When the giant ball exploded, Fang Yen and Laborious Life were rushing to the periphery. When the explosion ended, sand and pebbles flew everywhere, and the trees withered and disappeared. They had almost raised half of the flying peak to the ground. Fang Yen stood on the east side of Flying Peak, while Laborious Life stood on the west side of Flying Peak. The two stood facing each other from afar, not saying a word, not even taking a step, but the sound of swords clashing could be heard. Sword! Laborious Life shouted. Gong Sun Chi threw the sword in his hand over, and when Laborious Life reached out to catch it, the scabbard naturally fell off, and the sword that fell into Laborious Life's hand happened to be the 3-foot-long sword. With the sword in hand, Laborious Life's aura became even colder and more murderous. I like using swords, do you have a suitable weapon? Laborious Life looked at Fang Yen and asked. Fang Yen shrugged and said, I only have this pair of palms, then I'll take advantage of you. Laborious Life smiled and said. You didn't have to say that. Because opponents of their level could hurt with just a flying leaf or a plucking flower. Some were good with spears, some with short swords. Some were good with fists or iron palms. If a sword against a fist was a great advantage, then what about a sword against a spear? In the end, it all depended on the subtlety of the technique or the control of strength as well as the right time and place. Laborious Life might not be able to win against Fang Yen even with a sword, just like how Emo Qingdi the Azure Dragon couldn't win against Laborious Life even with a spear. Fang Yen practiced Tai Chi, so holding a spear or a sword wasn't his forte. In the path of martial arts, one had to use what one was good at. For example, Fang Yen killed Tao addict Song transplanting seedlings with one shot. Seeing Laborious Life using a spear, Yi Ro raised her eyebrows slightly. She knew that it wasn't good for Fang Yen, but she didn't say anything. Laborious Life's forte was good with a sword, this was something everyone knew. It would be unfair if he wasn't allowed to use a sword in the competition. Besides, if Fang Yen had a weapon he liked, he could use it too. Laborious Life would not stop Laborious Life. Looking at the sword in Laborious Life's hand, Yi Ro's heart couldn't help but tighten. This sword was called Exorcist. Back then, Laborious Life used this sword to cut off Emo Qingdi the Azure Dragon's tendons, causing the Azure Dragon's cultivation to be completely destroyed. Since then he had been a useless person. Now that he had used the Demon Slayer sword again, what would be Fang Yan's fate? Laborious Life raised the Exorcist Life sword, the seemingly ordinary pitch-black sword without a trace of light. Fang Yan, take this, Laborious Life said to Fang Yan. Chapter 841. You can only see the demon-slaying sword before and after he draws his sword. Emo Qingdi once said to Fang Yan. It meant that when the dragon god draws his sword, you can't see the earth sword in his hand. Fang Yan naturally believed it because Emo Qingdi didn't see it back then either. Otherwise he wouldn't have expressed his feelings like this. Fang Yan's current level was the same as Emo Qingdi's back then, but he didn't dare to say that he was stronger than Emo Qingdi back then. At his peak, Emo Qingdi was glorious, much more high profile and dazzling than he was now. Of course, this was mainly because he liked to keep a low profile. He wasn't the kind of man who would go around showing off his achievements. For example, the fact that he had stepped into the water overflow state, other than telling his grandfather Fang Huwei, mother Lu Wan, fiancé Yi Ro's dead father, and the ancestors of the Fang family, only Master Yi Fengxing, Yi Xiaojun, Bruce Lee and Ruan Jing of Swallow Dock knew about it. He even specifically told them not to tell anyone else. He didn't like to show off and he didn't like to be feared. Fang Yan knew that the dragon god had lost his patience. Based on their level of cultivation, if they were to fight regularly, it would probably take 3 days and 3 nights. Obviously, that wasn't in line with the dragon god's interests. First, he didn't want to fight with Fang Yan for so long. Because the longer it went on, the greater the impact. Maybe even the country would step in to stop it. A battle without an outcome was like doing something without a climax. It was a waste of time and energy. If other onlookers found this place, the scene would be even more chaotic. It would affect the mood of the battle. Second, he was old, and no matter how strong he was, he couldn't compare to a young man like Fang Yan, who became more energetic and ferocious as he fought. Moreover, he realized that Fang Yan's learning ability was shockingly fast. With a few words of advice, he immediately broke through the wall and entered the real water overflow state. If he fought with him for 3 days and 3 nights, how much combat experience would he learn? The dragon god just needed a real opponent, but that didn't mean he wanted to lose this battle. So he chose to use a sword. Fang Yan had no sword, only a pair of iron feet and 2 iron fists. "Please?" Fang Yan said. His voice was soft and there was almost no movement of his lips. It was as if those words were not spoken by him at all. Fang Yan calmed himself down, his state of mind unprecedentedly tranquil. His eyes were clear but his mind was blank. The heart of Taiji slowly flowed, like the roaming clouds in the sky, like the birds taking a stroll on the ground, like the brook in the forest, unhurried and natural. That transparent crystal hung upside down in the middle of the energy sea, surrounded by clouds and mist. That was the scattered chi that did not abide by the rules. There was an immortal mountain in the immortal world. The mountain was in the sea of clouds. Under Fang Yan's gaze, the dragon god's life disappeared. It was like a goshawk disappearing in the sky. The goshawk was powerful, but the sky was vast and boundless. It was difficult for it to cause any ripples. Fang Yan only had eyes for that sword. It was a very strange scene. The body of the dragon god's life disappeared, but the sword in his hand was still there. That sword hung in mid-air, like an instrument controlled by an immortal. It rushed toward Fang Yan at lightning speed. Its target was firm and it stabbed toward Fang Yan's face. You can only see the demon slayer sword before and after he draws his sword. This was what Mo Qingdi told Fang Yan. However, Fang Yan could clearly see that sword. He could see it clearly, even the slight vibration of the blade, and he could even hear the buzzing sound of the blade as it flew. Something's wrong. Fang Yan suddenly came to a realization. Mo Qingdi couldn't see it, but why could he see it? The dragon god's life disappeared, but why didn't the sword disappear? This wasn't a sword. It was a sword shadow. It was the shadow left by the long sword before it was swung. Because it was so fast, it left a trail in the air like a white rainbow. Where was the real body of the sword? Fang Yan's body flew into the air, like a cannonball that had been fired. The sword appeared. The sword appeared in front of Fang Yan. The sword appeared in between Fang Yan's eyebrows, and then it grew infinitely larger. It was like a giant pillar that could hold up the sky, flying toward Fang Yan's head. Fang Yan felt his body tense up, and every hair on his body stood on end. He felt the energy and hot blood in his body surge up from the bottom to the top, and then gathered in the middle of his head, as if it was going to burst through the top of his head and then burst out. It was a fear that reached the depths of his bones. Fang Yan had a strong feeling that he was going to be split in half. This sword was earth-shattering. It was ordinary, but it was majestic and spectacular. It made one's heart tremble, and it was difficult to parry. There was no sound of thunder and no flash of lightning. It was just so quiet, like a ghost ship that suddenly appeared from the Black Sea. He was unstoppable, and it wasn't something that could be done by a human. Immortal vanquishing. Gong Sun Chi shouted in agitation. His pupils dilated as he muttered something. This is the immortal vanquishing sword art. It said that after the battle of the twin dragons, Master sealed this ultimate move, and it has never been used in front of others. So this is the might of the immortal vanquishing sword. This is the might of the immortal vanquishing sword. Too shocking. Fang Yan. Yi Ro called out inwardly. Her hand was already holding onto the end of the whip by her waist, ready to rush forward to save him at any moment. She knew that sparring between heavenly Tao realm existences wasn't to be disturbed. She knew that this was a battle of honor and dignity between two peerless experts. She also knew that if she were to interfere, she would be breaking the rules. She even knew that it would be difficult for her to succeed even if she tried to save him. However, he was her man, her husband that she wanted to spend the rest of her life with. She couldn't watch helplessly as he was slain by a single sword strike. Rules? Rules? What honor and dignity? Anyone could have it. All she wanted was for Fang Yan to be safe. Fang Yan's forehead was burning with pain. It was a pain that felt like his aura was about to be sliced apart. The clothes on his chest peeled off inch by inch, and before they could separate from his body, they were already burning in midair. Countless sparks appeared in the sky before they were instantly extinguished into ashes. Fang Yan closed his eyes. He raised his hands to block the sword, as though it was a natural counterattack, but also a natural self-preservation reaction when one encountered danger. A golden beam of light tore through the sky, illuminating the entire peak of Feilai Peak as though it was daytime. The light of Taiji. This is the light of Taiji. Gong Sun Chi was like a child who had never seen the world as he shouted in agitation. He had long heard that Fang Yan had figured out the light of Taiji. For this, a few elders from the Dao sect had specially gone to Swallow Dock to visit him, hoping that he would join the Dao sect and revive the declining trend of the Dao sect. He did not expect that he would not have the chance to see this unique skill until now. Fang Yan did not even use it when they went on a mission to the Millennium Palace. Of course, he also knew that with the flashy appearance of the light of Taiji, if Fang Yan used it, he would become a human target, and everyone would gather towards the place where the light of Taiji flashed. A smile also appeared on Yi Ro's face, but she was not as excited as Gong Sun Chi. She knew the magic of the light of Taiji and secretly prayed that the light of Taiji could help Fang Yan block the killing move that the divine dragon had painstakingly used with all his might. This was Fang Yan, the man that Yi Ro liked. The light of Taiji. This was the light of Taiji that Fang Yan had figured out when he was besieged on the summit of Single Sword Peak. The light of Taiji was like a solid pillar of light, but it also looked like a huge golden sword. It went towards the demon-slaying sword that the divine dragon had painstakingly used. The demon-slaying sword slashed on the light of Taiji, and a strong burst of air was heard. The light of Taiji swept away the demon-slaying sword, and blocked this round of attack that the divine dragon had painstakingly used. The divine dragon's painstakingly used body appeared in the air, and then disappeared again. He gripped the sword with both hands and flew down from above. Then he slashed at the light of Taiji. Like a knife cutting through tofu, the light of Taiji that was like a golden rainbow was cut into two by the demon-slaying sword. The sword's momentum did not decrease, and continued to slash towards Fang Yan's face. The divine dragon's sword was definitely going to cut Fang Yan in two. No, if he was affected by the sword chi on the demon-slaying sword, it was likely that Fang Yan's whole body would be blasted into pieces. However, there were already very few people in this world that could make him a second severance. Even Mo Qingdi in the past had been severed under his third severance, so he could no longer move. Fang Yan could be called a prodigy of the martial Dao tier. Fang Yan's body was still flying backwards. Forced by the sword chi, Fang Yan's speed of retreat was even faster. The divine dragon was also chasing after him at high speed, looking like he would not give up until he achieved his goal. The demon-slaying sword was still in Fang Yan's eyes, but he knew that it was not the real sword. It was only the trajectory left behind by the sword when it was moving at high speed. Fang Yan's pupils dilated, and then his eyes also felt scorching hot. Fang Yan's eyes began to bleed. The blood flowed on his face and slid down his cheeks. Then his nose and mouth also began to bleed. The blood that flowed out did not even have time to spread. The demon-slaying sword slashed down from the top of Fang Yan's head, and his body was cut into two. Starting from the top of his head, then between his brows, eyes, nose, mouth, neck, abdomen, and neck all the way to the lower part of his body. One Fang Yan became two halves of Fang Yan, and the two halves of Fang Yan fell to the left and right at the same time. This strike was clean and efficient, as easy and casual as a knife cutting through tofu. There was no blood. The divine dragon had worked hard and he actually did not see any blood. Chapter 842. There was no blood, which proved that he had missed. He found it hard to accept this outcome, but it seemed to be the truth. What he had slashed was not Fang Yan but Fang Yan's shadow. It was so fast that it almost solidified into an afterimage. Because Xinlong was too fast and his sword was too sharp, even his shadow could be cut in half. So, where was the real Fang Yan? An invisible enemy was the most dangerous one. Xinlong sensed the danger. After his sword missed, he did a 180-degree turn and slashed horizontally without any hesitation. However, he was still one step too late. Screech, the sound of flesh being cut could be heard. Fang Yan's body flew in the air like a flying white sheep. Unbeknownst to him, he was already behind the divine dragon, holding a broken sword formed from the light of Tai Chi and stabbing it into the back of the divine dragon. With one successful strike, Fang Yan retreated. Screech! The demon-slaying sword slashed across Fang Yan's body, leaving a huge gash on his body. Crack! Both of them retreated at the same time and landed on the ground at the same time. Shunlong stood on the east side of the mountain peak, while Fang Yan stood on the west side. They were in the same position as before the battle, as if they had not moved at all. To the spectators, the two of them seemed to have fought for a few rounds, but all of this happened in the blink of an eye. Even the current recording equipment would not be able to capture any of their movements. The two of them stood opposite each other again, looking at each other calmly. After a few breaths, blood began to ooze from Fang Yan's chest. The threads of blood pushed open the flesh that had been cut open by the sword, and then the blood flowed out faster and more rapidly. Soon, the remaining pieces of cloth on Fang Yan's body were dyed red with blood. His exposed chest was a mess of blood and flesh, and it looked like his injury was serious. Shunlong's expression was peaceful and his clothes were intact. He stood proudly like a master of his generation. However, Gong Sun Chi, who had rushed to his back, could clearly see that his master's back was also bleeding. The blood soaked the robe and the gray robe became a deep faded color. The air was filled with a choking smell of blood. "Master is injured," Gong Sun Chi exclaimed. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. His master, the dragon god, had worked so hard, yet he was injured? Ever since he started learning from his master, he had never seen his master suffer any harm. Even some small injuries that could be ignored had never happened. For example, cutting one's finger while cutting one's fingernail, cutting one's finger while peeling an apple, abrasions or bone dislocations while practicing martial arts. Never before. Now, Fang Yan actually stabbed his own master with a sword? What exactly happened? The light of Tai Chi was condensed by strength Chi. After Fang Yan stabbed the broken sword that had been cut off by the demon-slaying sword into the back of the divine dragon, the light of Tai Chi disappeared naturally. The sword disappeared, and a wound that went deep into his internal organs naturally appeared on his body. "Your eyes are deceiving you," Fang Yan said as he looked at the mystical dragon. It was just like what the mystical dragon had said to him in the beginning. The same words, the same tone. Even the expression was the same. The high and mighty look made him look like he deserved a beating. "Yes, my eyes are deceiving me," the mystical dragon nodded and said. "Illusion. You used 3 layers of illusion. I have to say you're a genius. You've just learned how to use illusion to deceive your opponent and attack, but you've already reached this stage. I can only use 3 layers of illusion just like you." Fang Yan grinned, completely ignoring the blood flowing from his chest. "Your brain is deceiving you," Fang Yan said again. "That's right." The mystical dragon once again agreed with Fang Yan's conclusion. "I shouldn't have used the second sword. When your light of Tai Chi appeared, the body you showed was already an illusion. I shouldn't have insisted on using that sword." After a pause, the mystical dragon looked thoughtfully at Fang Yan and said, "In some ways you handled it better than the Azure Dragon Mo Qing Di. I used 3 strikes to kill Mo Qing Di, so I thought the second strike would be enough to take you down, and I even prepared the third strike. But when I used the second strike, you had already used illusion to escape and then attacked me from behind. You're different from Mo Qing Di. Mo Qing Di would have chosen to fight head-on, but you found another way. A great teacher produces a great disciple. You're a good teacher," Fang Yan said with a smile. "The teacher leads the way, but cultivation depends on the individual." The mystical dragon smiled as well. "How much you can comprehend depends on the individual. But there's a saying that I deeply agree with: if you teach your disciple, the master will starve to death. The ancients were right." "Now it's my turn to attack," Fang Yan said with a smile. The divine dragon struggled to lift the long sword and said, "Please." Step by step, Fang Yan walked towards the dragon god. He swaggered like a farm owner inspecting his own vegetable garden. The divine dragon struggled to look at Fang Yan's eyes. When a person made a move, his eyes were the first to react. Fang Yan looked like a brute. He wanted to walk up to the dragon god and give him a good beating. If his opponent was not the dragon god, he could indeed do so. But wasn't he joking now? Ku Fengming didn't think he was joking. He didn't walk in a straight line but in a curve. It looked like a rampage, but in reality, it was a cycle. Every step left 3 changes, and the 3 changes could give rise to infinite changes. This was the true meaning of Taiji. 1 begets 2, 2 begets infinity. When Fang Yan spoke, it was Taiji. When he walked, it was Taiji. Every word and action was in line with the way of Taiji. Now Fang Yan and Taiji had merged into one. I'm Taiji, I mean Taiji. Because of the continuous flow of vital energy, he looked energetic and energetic. This was the performance of the legendary Taiji water overflow realm. In the eyes of the divine dragon god, Fang Yan, who was striding towards him, looked full of loopholes. But if he dared to act rashly, then every loophole could be a real trap. Of course there would be loopholes. Everyone would have loopholes or dead ends. But when there were too many loopholes, you wouldn't know which loophole was the real one. When Fang Yan was 2 to 3 meters in front of the divine dragon god, he raised his right arm and gave a light slap. After that slap, Fang Yan's entire arm disappeared in midair. Under the gaze of Fang Yan and the divine dragon god, it turned into nothingness. At the same time, the divine dragon god slashed out with his sword. Like all the previous slashes, there was no shadow. This formed a strange scene. They were still standing in this world, but their clashing palms and swords seemed to have entered another world. There was no abnormality, nor was there the sound of metal clashing. But Fang Yan's right palm was madly slapping. Slap after slap, it was like a storm. The divine dragon god stabbed his sword again and again, like will-the-wisp stars. Suddenly, there was a violent tearing sound in the space in front of them. Their hair was messed up by the strong wind, their clothes were blown backwards by the strong wind, and their facial features were distorted by the wind. Then the two of them suddenly flew backwards in the air. Boom, there was a violent explosion. After the explosion, a huge tornado appeared. The grass, branches, sand, and rocks on the ground that were not hard enough were all sucked into the eye of the tornado and disappeared in an instant. It was like a black hole that could swallow everything. As it spun faster and faster, more distant and larger objects were sucked in. This included Fang Yan Tenacious, who was fighting fiercely in the air, and Yi Ro and Gong Sun Chi, who were watching from the side. Yi Ro did not move, but her feet had already sunk deep into the cracks of the stones. 2 deep holes the size of footprints appeared on the hard stone ground. Gong Sun Chi's clothes flapped. His body leaned forward slightly to resist the suction of the tornado, and he looked like he was struggling. Fang Yan and the divine dragon god struggled to fight in the air. They turned into 2 shadows, one black and one white, and then 2 equally dark black dots. Finally, they merged into one and became a gale that was hard to be seen by the naked eye. Feng Mountain had a lot of wind and sand. Another sandstorm came from the north, covering the sky and covering the earth. It seemed like it was going to drown the whole world. Rustle, the terrifying sound of sand colliding rang in the air and instantly enveloped them. Fang Yan Tenacious ordered Yi Ro, Gong Sun Chi, the whole Feng Mountain, and the people on Feng Mountain to become one with them. The whole world was gray as if the end of the world was coming. At this moment, a huge lone eagle suddenly appeared in the middle of the sandstorm. No, how could a lone eagle appear in the middle of the sandstorm? It was more like a ghost hidden in a sandstorm, a demon that struck fear in people's hearts. Yi Ro, who had been watching the battle, suddenly became alert. Her sharp eyes penetrated the sandstorm and shouted anxiously, "Fang Yan, watch out!" In the end, he was still a step too late. The black figure was hidden in the sandstorm. With the help of the cold wind that blew from the north, it charged towards Fang Yan and Fu Ming, who were fighting. Swish! The blazing white light lit up, and even the dense sand and dust that made it hard for people to open their eyes could not hide it. Boom! At the place where the white light came from, the sandstorm disappeared. Even the air seemed to have been purified. Soon, everything returned to normal. More sand and dust rushed over to fill the empty space. Chapter 843. The sandstorm grew stronger as though countless flying insects were covering their heads. Looking up, they couldn't see the sky and it was difficult to even open their eyes. It happened so suddenly that there were almost no signs. No one expected a third party to disrupt the battle between 2 Heavenly Tao Realm experts at the peak of Maple Mountain. Who was he? What was he trying to do? To kill 2 Heavenly Tao Realm experts in one fell swoop? Even if it was a sneak attack, it probably wasn't an easy task to accomplish such a grand goal, unless he was also a Heavenly Tao Realm expert. It was so blazing that it felt like a sun had suddenly emerged from beneath their feet. The white light illuminated the night sky, illuminating the entire Maple Mountain range as though it was daytime. The intense light was like a gigantic firework that disappeared in a flash, leaving behind a huge vacuum in midair. The sand in that area was dispersed without a trace, and even time seemed to have frozen. Humans could change nature, but they would ultimately be changed by nature. Soon, the vacuum was filled with a deeper sandstorm. The sandstorm, which was rarely torn open, once again shrouded the world. It was so oppressive that it made it hard for people to breathe. Fang Yan, Yi Rou called out anxiously. She was the first to notice the anomaly in the sandstorm, but before she could do anything, the sandstorm had already lit up with a white light, as though someone had dropped an atomic bomb. When the white light vanished and the sandstorm continued, she flew towards the explosion site. Master, although Gong Sun Chi's reaction was slower than Yi Rou's, he knew what had happened since he had been paying attention to the battle. There was actually another person who dared to interfere in the battle between two Heavenly Dao Realm experts. Furthermore, he had charged into the battle without any qualms. Even if you're shameless, you should at least want your life, right? Through the previous exchange, Gong Sun Chi knew how strong Fang Yan and his master, Divine Dragon, were. Even though he was in the periphery of the battlefield, he would occasionally be pressured and assaulted by the forces. It was enough to make him feel uneasy. If he were to fight Fang Yan or his master, he would probably be crushed to smithereens in a single round. This was the suppression of realms. You wouldn't even be able to see the trajectory of his attacks, and you would already have to bid farewell to the world. This was what happened after such cruelty. Didn't Fang Yan experience something like this when he fought with his master at the very beginning? Although the top of his head was once again covered by the sandstorm, it was as if nothing had happened. There was no white light and there was no explosion that resounded through the mountain top. However, everything that had just happened was recorded on the ground of the explosion site. Not even a blade of grass grew and the rubble turned into powder. It was just like the sandpit that appeared in Oasis. There was no life in the sandpit except for the tiny grains of sand. There was no one either. Fang Yan and the dragon god disappeared. The third person who came with the sandstorm like a lone nighthawk also disappeared. Master, Master, Gong Sun Chi stood in the huge stone pit and shouted. He turned to look at Yi Rou and asked, where did they go? He knew that Yi Rou's realm was higher than his. She must know what he didn't know. Wait, Yi Rou said. What are we waiting for? Where did Master and the others go? Who was that man in black? How could he have the guts to disrupt this decisive battle? What happened just now? Gong Sun Chi didn't finish his words. Because he found that when he was speaking, the atmosphere at the scene became tense again. Two dark figures stood on the huge stones in the east and west directions in the distance. Because the sandstorm was too strong, the visibility was reduced, and it was impossible to see their facial expressions clearly. There was another person who landed not far from the sandpit and was looking at Yi Rou with a smile. Are you okay? Yi Rou looked at Fang Yan and asked. I'm fine. Fang Yan shook his head with a smile. This drama is getting more and more exciting. Gong Sun Chi looked at Fang Yan and asked, Fang Yan, who was the guy who sneaked up on us? I don't know who it was, Fang Yan said with a smile. But you will know soon. Gong Sun Chi wanted to ask more, but he found that Fang Yan had turned to face the two men in black on the east and west sides. He felt a little disappointed. After all, he wasn't qualified to be an opponent at their level. Fang Yan looked at the black shadow shrouded in a black robe in the west and said with a smile, there aren't many people in this world who would dare disrupt a battle between two Heavenly Dao Realm experts. And there might only be one person who would have such black-bellied thoughts, Mr. Black Dragon. I've admired you for a long time. Are you still unwilling to take off your black robe and let us fans see your true appearance? The black-robed man in the east said with a hoarse voice, like the sound of sand colliding in the air, even if I were to take off my mask and let you see my true appearance, how would you know who I am? Fang Yan was taken aback and said, I don't know, but someone else will know. Divine Dragon seemed to be in a good mood despite his hard work. He said in a relaxed tone, I've never seen Black Dragon's true appearance either. I'm afraid there aren't many people in this world who have seen it, right? All you need to know is that I'm Black Dragon. Black Dragon's tone was as arrogant as ever. Anything else is meaningless to you. That's true. Fang Yan nodded with a smile. Since you have already admitted that you are Black Dragon, then your identity is confirmed. Mr. Black Dragon, you wish to kill us? That's right. Black Dragon answered without hiding anything. What? Fang Yan asked. Don't you think that there are too many Heavenly Dao Realm experts? Black Dragon said with a serious look. Of course, you couldn't see his expression, but you could tell from his tone that he was asking this question in an extremely serious manner. There are more and more people and things are getting more and more noisy. It's really a little vexing. If we can kick two of them out at once, wouldn't this world be a lot quieter? Fang Yan thought about it seriously as he looked at Divine Dragon and said with great difficulty, I think what he said makes a lot of sense. Didn't you have the same thoughts back then? Back then, the three of you were the most dazzling warriors in all of Wuxia. Black Dragon appeared and disappeared mysteriously, making it difficult to find his tracks. It was even more difficult for him to resist your influence in the mortal world. Only the Azure Dragon Mo Qingdi had the same feelings and ambitions as you, and his influence far exceeded yours. You challenged the Azure Dragon and tore his tendons. The Azure Dragon perished, and for decades, you were the only one shining in the sky, like the only star in this world. Divine Dragon's expression was solemn as he pondered for a moment, nodded and said, "Back then, I hadn't seen through the desire for fame and fortune, so I still ended up in a disadvantageous position. Men leave their names behind and geese leave their voices behind. Life is short, not more than 100 years. Who doesn't want to leave something in this world for future generations to remember? For the title of number one in the world, there are plenty of people who would sever their opponent's limbs and kill their entire family, much less tore off their opponent's tendons. Compared to those people, you are already considered benevolent." Divine Dragon looked at Fang Yen and said, "The Azure Dragon doesn't think so." "Of course." Fang Yen nodded with absolute certainty and said, "If I were the Azure Dragon, I would definitely want to take revenge and kill your entire family. You see, no matter what level we've reached, no matter what realm we've stepped into, we're still mere mortals. We can't let go of fame and fortune, nor can we let go of grudges," Divine Dragon said with a smile. "If someone scolds me, I'll respond with a sentence. If someone punches me, I'll return with a few kicks. Is this considered the heavenly axiom?" Fang Yen asked. Divine Dragon thought for a moment and said, "Following the heavenly axiom is naturally the heavenly axiom." "Naturally, this is the highest achievement of our Tai Chi," Fang Yen said with a smile. "So, I've never felt that it's a dirty and shameful thing to take revenge on someone who has a grudge against them. On the contrary, those who bear a blood feud would abandon it in the name of the heavenly axiom, losing their passion and temperament, and going against the heavenly axiom." "You're a sentimental person," Divine Dragon said. "But," Fang Yen looked at the Black Dragon and said, "we have no grudge against him, yet he came here to kill us. Isn't this too much of a bully? For his own axiom he wants to destroy our axiom? Is this also the heavenly axiom?" Divine Dragon calmly looked at the Black Dragon and said, "This is not the heavenly axiom, this is the demonic axiom. The sword in your hand is called Exorcist, then let's use this Exorcist sword to get rid of this demon," Fang Yen suggested. "You knew I was coming?" the Black Dragon solemnly asked. He used a special concealment method to conceal himself. Even his breathing and heartbeat could not be heard. Moreover, the sandstorm tonight was extremely strong. He had adjusted the frequency of his movement to match the speed of the sandstorm. There was a 90% chance of a successful sneak attack, so how could he be intercepted by the two of them at the most crucial moment? If they hadn't known in advance, how could they have simultaneously stopped at the critical moment and drawn his Gale Tempest Bringer over? If his Gale Tempest Guide had enveloped their bodies in the sandstorm, or exploded right next to them, Fang Yen and Divine Dragon would be either dead or heavily injured. But they managed to dodge it, and their combined attack made him suffer in silence. Although he managed to dodge Divine Dragon's desperate strike, his back was slapped by that bastard Fang Yen. Even now, his qi and blood were still in turmoil, and he couldn't circulate his energy smoothly. That was why the Black Dragon asked such a question. Fang Yen laughed heartily and said, "We're the male and female leads of this show, and you're the best supporting actor. Although the best supporting actor appeared a little late, I knew he would definitely appear." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.